Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Racing Line Motorsport 2 hours of Monza, brought to you by DAIKO. My name is Ryan Gill, and I will be your lead host for this afternoon. And alongside me, I have the very magnanimous ever Jesse Lee to bring you 2 hours of incredible racing here around the Autodromo Monza. How are you doing today, Jesse?
Well, hello there, Ryan Gill, and hello, everybody out there as well. I am doing fantastic, and what a beautiful day it is for motorsport. Hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a fantastic weekend, and it doesn't get any better than this. Some of the biggest esports stars in action here today at one of the best racing tracks in the world.
Yeah, we have a whole host of incredible names out here on the timing sheets for the session. Of course, we have practice on at the moment, and we're going to be throwing into live scenes very, very shortly here. And, well, practice, Jesse, it doesn't really tell the full story of the event, but you can see the times on the sheet right now as we see Nils Najoks in the G2 Esports BMW. Fantastic livery on that car here today. And, well, you can see from the timing sheets already, 146.992 up at the top, incredibly fast right from the start. And, well, Jesse, give us a run through of some of the names that we have here today.
Oh my goodness. We have Simonini, who is leading currently in a Jag. I looked over the list before we got started here today. I was amazed to see so many Jags, but then you guys reminded me just how fast these cars are in a straight line. We've got Saklari, Garcia, Hosseini, Rose, for instance. You mentioned Nils himself. Of course, you have Crostani in the field, Jardier, and many, many more. Ebrich is in here, Lawrence, and again, the list goes on. It's going to be an incredible race here as practice finishes up and we go to qualifying, and, well, it's anybody's race, Ryan.
It is anybody's race, of course, here at Monza. It is a test of straight line speed for a lot of these cars, most of them going to be running low wing setups for both qualifying and the race. And of course, that falling into the hands of the Jags and some of the Lamborghinis. We do have a BOP on the server as well here today, and that's going to be in the form of 15 kilos added to the Mercs. You can see Jaroslav Honzik, also known as Jardier here. He's in one of the Mercedes cars, and that car's going to be carrying an extra 15 kilos of weight to it. Also carrying an extra 10 kilos of weight is the Lamborghinis. So 2 cars getting a bit of a BOP update custom from Racing Line Motorsport to try and reel them in a bit to make sure that they're not too quick out here today. But as we've been speaking about that, I think it's Racing Line Motorsport's very own Kevin Saklari that's just gone to the top of the practice timing sheets with a 146.785.
Yeah, an absolute blistering time. We don't expect anything less out of these guys. I'm sure some of these gentlemen today showed up to the racetrack in a spaceship, of course, but that is such the nature of alien drivers in sim racing. They are going to come out here and they are going to show up and put up fantastic lap times and numbers. And even if it is in practice, but in qualifying, that's where you start to make your money. And a starting spot around here, not the most important track to have a really great qualifying on, but regardless, you'd like to be first, wouldn't you?
Well, you would, and especially with the nature that Monza has in sim racing especially, and even in the real world of racing as well. You know, the turn 1 here at Monza, it's quite infamous, isn't it, for its accidents and, kind of messy starts that we have. Of course, we do have some live stewarding in force here today, courtesy of Racing Line Motorsport. So nice to see that they're getting in with some live stewarding here for this esports event. And of course, thank you to DAIKO as well for helping get all of this together. But yeah, so down into turn 1, it's going to be interesting come the race. Obviously, starting further up the grid means you'll have a better chance of making it through turn 1 nice and clean, and we hope to see a nice and clean start regardless from all of these guys. But starting further at the back will, kind of lean yourself into getting into a bit of trouble early on in the race.
Yeah, we are always aware of the ever-present danger. This place synonymous with lap 1, turn 1 incidents. It's a hard right-hand chicane after a long front straightaway here, and it's important to get that right. It's even more important to stay out of trouble, like you said, if you're in the mid-pack, and I sometimes envy the drivers who do get to start in the front and in the back, because at least they have the better shot of missing an incident. And certainly in a 2-hour race like we have today, it's not going to end your day if you have a bad T1, but it'll certainly dampen your spirits a bit.
Yeah, and keeping your spirits high at a circuit like this is, so important. To be late on the brakes, to have the confidence to throw the car into these chicanes. You have to be confident, and you're not going to be confident if you've been caught up in a first lap accident down towards the first corner. But the second chicane also has its fair share of problems as well. Usually, if you don't see an incident in the first chicane, the second chicane will usually correct that. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see how all of these guys treat this circuit, and especially Ascari as well. Plenty of accidents there on the opening laps, quite common as well. And of course, throughout the course of the race, it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with it. A really, really tricky part of the circuit that we do often see incidents at on, people on their own.
I can tell you something else. While we're on the subject of incidents, we're going to get all the bad energy out before qualifying. One thing that I think, and I've seen, is that if you make it through lap 1, turn 1, you see a lot of incidents in the subsequent corners going all the way to Ascari and Parabolica, and even into the second lap. It's almost like the second lap around here some of the time, especially with these esports stars, is more dangerous, because I think if they feel they have survived lap 1, they get a little too comfortable on lap 2, and things can go wrong when you take your eye off the ball.
Definitely so, and Giorgio Simonini, he's going to go back up towards the top of the timing sheets, 146.626. But here's Jag, that fantastic livery that they've got running here. And, whilst we're here talking about liveries, we'll have a bit of a talk as to all the amazing custom liveries that are out here today that are being allowed to be run for this event. Here is Alberto Garcia in his Mercedes. Of course, he's one of the cars carrying an extra bit of weight because of the BOP that we're using here at Monza. And he's driving for Odox Motorsport at the moment. And some fantastic livery designs out here. Of course, Jesse, we love to talk liveries whenever we do get the chance. And whilst we do just have under a minute left of practice before we get into qualifying, I think it was kind of appropriate that we do mention all of the amazing cars that we have out here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love a custom livery. I love whenever a driver's personality and sponsors and everything else comes out in their driving and their paint job as well. And bravo to every single driver here with just having fantastic. I was actually doing that before we went live. I was just cycling through the entire paddock of cars, looking at what they're bringing to the table. Of course, here's David Chiesa in his Racing Line Motorsport 222 Ferrari with the Racing Line livery on it, and a lovely looking vehicle that is indeed. But I'll tell you something else too. Of course, we are using custom BOP here, and it has had a dramatic effect on these Mercedes so far. It has slowed them right down and brought them in line with the other cars.
Yeah, the Mercedes does seem to be quite strong in a straight line typically, but of course with that extra weight on, they do seem to be struggling a bit here. But as we are at the end of practice now, waiting for the session to tick over, we'll get into qualifying fairly shortly. And this is Maciej Malinowski in the 992. He's of course finished his practice lap, and he will finish no higher than 9th in practice. Not using a custom livery for that car, but in a Lamborghini either way. Popular choice around here at Monza. And as we switch to some scenes of the Monza circuit here whilst we wait for the qualifying session to tick over, Jesse. I think it's probably appropriate that we have a bit of a mention of the, the manufacturers that we have out here today. We've talked about how Lamborghini and Mercedes have been BOP'd, but, we've got some Jags out here that have already been mentioned. We've seen some BMWs with their rising popularity as of late, and we do even have a Bentley out on the grid and a McLaren as well.
So many different manufacturers. That's the part that makes GT racing so great, is having all of these cars, all this brand identity, all the sounds, the engine configurations. Where do I get started? It's lovely to see so many cars out here, and we saw in practice so many, if not all of those manufacturers within a second, most of them within half a second of one another. It just adds to the pressure to get it right here in qualifying. But it is lovely to see, again, not only liveries, but all the different cars. It's going to be a 20-minute qualifying session here today at Monza. 11 a.m. is the official start time. 20 degrees C, the track temperature, 17 degrees. Ambient light breeze out of the south. Completely clouded over here, Ryan Gill. That might aid them in grip a little bit. What do you think?
I think you've always got to use anything that comes your way to your advantage, whether it's, using a tailwind to try and get some speed on one, part of the straight. But you've got to remember that whatever helps you on one straight will probably go against you on another straight. So it's always something you've got to be conscious of. But we're looking at Valentin Barrier here, as he's going to be the first car out to probably set a flying lap here in the Lexus Tech 1 Racing livery. Of course, no custom liveries for the Lexus out here today, I believe, but it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy this beautiful car as well. And it is a bit of a race, as you can see on the track map. Everyone trying to get out as quick as possible. And, well, with a 20-minute qualifying session, we don't usually see people panic too much in terms of getting out on track and setting some laps down. But I kind of get the feeling that with the quality we have here today, Jesse, that everyone wants to get laps down as quick as possible.
Yeah, only a few cars hanging around in pit road right now. I count maybe 5 cars that have yet to leave pit road. It was an absolute land rush start to get out. And like you said, sort of uncommon for us to see a qualifying session that is a 20-minute session. But one thing's for sure, every single driver here, like you said, is going to be out for blood in this session. They are going to be going as many times around as they possibly can in the pursuit of perfection in this session. And that is what it's going to take to get the pole for this 2-hour race today. You're going to have to be absolutely perfect. Luckily for them, they have 17 and a half minutes now to get that done.
Valentin Barrier made his way through Prima Variante and now through Biasono as well, as he'll make his way up towards the Seconda Variante chicane. Got to be nice and late on the brakes, carry as much speed as possible. A few guys carrying second gear through this corner. And then he'll make his way up towards the 2 Lesmos, popular corners in the world of motorsport. Tricky to get right here, especially in these GT3 cars. Don't want to run too wide and doesn't do so. Then prepares himself for the second Lesmo. Don't catch the curb on the inside. Go as wide as the circuit will allow you to go. And make your way through Seraglio down towards Ascari. Of course, one of the most well-known sequences of corners in the world. So famous here at Monza. And you've got to get your entry right here. So here he comes, Valentin Barrier. Not too committed on the inside, but he's going to be so aggressive on the exit of the chicane. Goes really, really wide. Not touch the gravel trap, though. Important to maintain your speed, and now he makes his way down towards Parabolica. So important to finish out your lap here. So much time to be gained or lost. Valentin Barrier, very late on the brakes. Nice apex as well. Going to go out wide. Not too wide, though, to trouble that anti-cut curb on the outside of the corner. He'll make his way up towards the timing line now to put the first lap of the session down. It is a 1:48.3 from Valentin Barrier, but it's immediately beaten by Luka Wedelic, and now Kevin Ciclari with a 1:46.7.
Urban's tried, but they're about half of a second off. And Simonini right there covers the gap, now down to a quarter of a second. But Kevin Siclari with a 146.713, the fastest of them all in his number 7 Ferrari right now. But still 15 minutes and some change to go. It is all to play for, and they came out firing. That is not too far off from the fastest we saw in practice, and that was their first lap.
Kevin Siclari getting a fantastic banker lap down, and we do often talk about the banker lap, how important it can be to your qualifying session. And of course, the better your banker lap is, the better you can set yourself up to push harder and harder in the qualifying session. We're looking at Vincent Ebrich at the moment. He's in the Honda number 12, and the PCDC Motorsports Honda finding a bit of difficulty in the Lesmos. But either way, finding himself up at 4th on the grid, 2nd row of the grid, actually, for the start of the race so far. Only provisionally, though, as we do have just under 15 minutes of this qualifying session remaining. Plenty can still happen. But, Jesse, 4 different manufacturers in the top 4 after the first round of laps.
Well, we talked about it right as qualifying was starting, that brand identity and manufacturer parity is going to play a factor here today. And like I mentioned, we had a lot of cars, a lot of different manufacturers that were all really close to one another. That's going to continue to happen as Erbich goes back to 2nd place, and it was so close. 0.6 of a second, the difference between pole and 2nd place. We expect more of the same. And here comes the 26 McLaren. What are they going to be able to do? To the top of the order, it is a 46.581 is good enough for a pole, knocking Siclari down to 2nd place. And now the game is on and the gauntlet has been thrown down. And Malinowski now in the 992 coming to the line, and he can do no better than 6th, but that's still only a quarter of a second off. And if there's one thing we know, Ryan, a quarter of a second under race conditions, that's not enough to pull away from somebody on these long straightaways.
No, it isn't, but of course there is a significant difference between your qualifying pace and your race pace, and that's going to be something we'll be talking about over the course of the next 2 hours. Petrochenko, though, definitely setting the gauntlet down. That 146.5 is going to be very, very hard to beat, and he'll be setting himself up for the best place to start for the race. Having a look now at Alberto Fornaciero in the 117 Ferrari for the Apex Racing team. Lovely white and red livery out here for the Scuderia. Plenty of Ferraris on the grid, but no banker lap down yet for Fornaciero, and he's going to come up towards the timing line now. What is he going to be able to do as he comes up, crosses the line? He's going to go 16th. 6th is 0.6 of a second, off of the likes of pole position. Not too far, and in fact, an entire second stretching down to 19th place. Top 20, just over a second between each other, and we expect it to close up a bit more before the end of the session.
Still a lot of time here, not even halfway into this qualifying session, and they're playing leapfrog at the front of this field, and rather besides all through the field. As it turns out, so many different drivers and cars here today that could take the pole position. Of course, everybody has their own favorite up near the top of the field, but anybody's game here, as it is less than a half of a second inside the top 10. And to get more than a second gap on the board, you have to go all the way to 24th place just to tell you how close everyone is here today. We expect nothing different, to be honest, Ryan, but it is amazing to see just how minute the difference in pace is from some of these guys. And now there are 24 cars inside a second.
The times continue to come down as the session ticks on. We're not even halfway through qualifying. We have just over 11 minutes to go. And Marcus Lawrence in the PCDC Motorsport Honda, he's going to be trying to close the gap as well. Of course, we saw Vincent Ebrich up towards the top. He's gone third, actually, improved on his time again. And his teammate, Marcus Lawrence, going to try and find himself further up as well. He's up by a 1/10 of a second at this point in time. That could take him up into the top 10, but it won't get him as high as he probably wants to be unless he can gain some time now into the Parabolica. So here does come Marcus Lawrence in the 29 Honda. How is his exit going to be? Looking at his time, he's lost a bit of time actually coming out of the Parabolica. He'll come up towards the timing line. Will he improve? He will improve, but only up to 12th in front of Jaroslav Honzik in 13th. And I have to say, Jesse, you know it's a tough field when Jardier is finding himself down in 13th.
Yeah, I think Jardier here is looking for a little bit of speed. I can't tell if it's out of the corner or in the corner, but he's certainly looking for it. Of course, the custom BOP here has left his Mercedes with 15 kilos of extra ballast, but there are Mercedes inside the top 10. I suspect Jardier is still going to improve here as we have crossed the halfway point in qualifying, and what will likely happen is people will come in, maybe they'll make an adjustment due to the track conditions, maybe they'll just reset, get a new set of tires and go back out, but not a lot of that actually taking place. As I say that, a lot of them are just out there running lap after lap. At how long can you go realistically on this set of tires for qualifying before you say, all right, that's enough, fresh set of tires, and go back out?
I think realistically for qualifying, you're not going to go more than just a few laps, maybe 2-3 hot laps at best, as Jaroslav Honzik crosses the line and remains in 14th place. We do have a new provisional pole sitter, by the way. The Jag 150 that topped the time in practice has now gone provisional pole. It's a 146.569 for Giorgio Simonini. So the Jag that was looking so good in practice, replicating that performance here in qualifying. It's going to be a Jag and a McLaren provisionally on the front row, followed by 2 Ferraris, a Honda, a BMW, 2 BMWs on the 4th row provisionally, a Lamborghini and a Mercedes in the top 10. And we talked about the straight line speed of the Jag before we got into qualifying, Jesse, and it's starting to bear fruit now.
Yeah, that thing looks absolutely menacing. Simonini's 150 Jaguar. It is red and black. Almost looks like it has one of those World War II style faces on the front of that thing. But it is going absolutely quickly around here. This thing absolutely deadly. Might be the fastest of all the cars in a straight line. Does he improve on that lap? Yes, in fact, he does. He sets a 46.515, improving his time, but there is almost no time between him all the way back to third place, all within 1/10 of a second.
Nils Najoks, of course, in the G2 Esports BMW. His name being thrown around lately with a lot of the esports events going around in ACC, and he sits 10th at the moment. The BMW very powerful around here, good in a straight line, but that Jag just seems to be a bit quicker at the moment. However, Nils, he's 2/10 up, he's 3/10 up actually, coming into the Parabolica. Can he hold this pace as he comes towards the timing line? This could be provisional pole for Nils. And it is provisional pole. It's a 146.467. The BMW throws itself onto the front row in style. And that's given Simonini something to think about.
Simonini right now is considering, what do I have to do? I improved on my lap 3 times in a row, and all of a sudden Nils in the #1 BMW for G2 Esports just takes care of business with that 467. But of course, a lot of time left here. Track temperature and everything else is staying pretty steady, I'll say. But the times are indeed coming down here, and you got to wonder, does the 150 Jag have anything left to fight back against Nils?
Well, as if Nils wasn't going quick enough already, he's up by another 1/10 of a second on this lap. It could be that Nils is about to break into the 146.3, something we weren't too sure if we'd see here today. Of course, 21 degrees track temp, 17 ambient. These are good conditions, not, you know, experimental conditions that you see a lot of guys doing hot laps in, but of course, very, very good conditions for qualifying. And Nils will actually take another 10th as he comes out of Ascari. He's on the verge of being 2/10 up on this lap. He could be a quarter of a second up on the second place car at the moment if he can hold this pace. Lost a bit, though, on the exit of the Parabolica. He's still up by a 10th of a second. This is still going to be an improvement from Nils. The BMW crosses the line, and he's almost got 2/10 on the likes of Simonini. It's a 146.332.
Sitting here thinking very quietly to myself, I never would consider nearly 2/10 to be a massive gap, but considering what we had seen just earlier in this session, it is a very big gap for Simonini and Pfeffer and the rest of these guys to have to come back on. They are going to have to dig incredibly deep to take the G2 Esports star off of the provisional pole. That BMW absolutely flying. I can't help but feel, though, coming in and out of Parabolica, that he left just a little bit on the table.
Well, Nils will return to pit lane, maybe thinking his day is done, but I get the feeling we might still see the BMW out one more time before the end. Kevin Siclari was the provisional pole sitter after the first round of laps, but now finds himself down in 9th place for Racing Line Motorsport. So Kevin Siclari is going to have to get a move on a bit if he wants to find himself any further up the order. Having a look now at some of the times around here, not that many drivers up on their lap time. Tobias Befeffer was up on his lap time in the BMW. He's moved up to 3rd, by the way. And Kevin Siclari up by a 10th at the moment. And look how tight this is, Jesse. I mean, if you find yourself in 10th place at the moment where Romagnoli is, and you go up by a 10th of a second, you could find yourself in the top 5. It's so close here. And as we look down the order as well, we can only see the top 23 on the timing board, but the top 23 are covered by just about 8.5 tenths. And as we look further down as well, you can see it's the top 26, in fact, within a second.
Yeah, I have to say, it almost looks like one of those NASCAR qualifyings where everything is so tight and compact, but the difference is we're turning left and right here today, and all of these machines are incredibly differently. They're the opposite of identical in a lot of ways. Different displacements, different drive trains, all sorts, different power plants. It's just so interesting to see how close these guys are. You can tell that they are absolutely going for it, and the fact that they have probably trained for this as hard as they have trained for any other race, I would imagine, because again, I said that qualifying wasn't the most ultimately important thing here today, and I stand by that statement. But another thing is that it is so close that if you are Jardier and you're stuck in 20th, you're only 3/4 of a second down, but you're starting 20th. That's not good enough. If you pick up a couple of 10s, you could start inside the top 15.
Jesse, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it might all change again. Simonini's coming up towards the line. He's up by 2/10 of a second, in fact. Will he take provisional pole back? Yes, he will. It's a 146.242. He says to Nils, anything you can do, I can do better. And he'll go almost a 10th clear of Nils' previous pole-sitting lap time. We have just under 2 minutes left of this session. Does anyone have a response for the 150 Jag?
Well, I can tell you that was a fantastic lap for Luis Lacio there in the 28 Ferrari. Jumped himself all the way up to 3rd place. Here comes Kevin Siclari coming to the line here. He's in 9th place. Does he have anything to improve coming to the line? Yes, indeed, he does. Improves all the way up inside the top 5. Now, that's a proper starting spot for the Racing Line Motorsports driver. And here's Vincent Erbich, who is coming down into the second sector of the track now, going up towards the Les Moes. And I gotta say, this is just going to keep getting tighter and tighter. Nils less than a 10th out. Lacio less than 2/10 out. I thought that one of them would have already claimed this pole, but these guys are saying not so fast.
Yeah, a Jag and a BMW on the front row of the grid. A couple of Ferraris in the mix of the top 10 as well. But a lot of the faces that we saw at the top of the order have dropped down a bit now. We're still watching Vincent Ebrich in the number 12 Honda. He's going to do the best that he can to drag that car as high up the order as possible. And he's not up on his time at the moment, unfortunately, for the Honda. And I think that was Kevin Seclari's car off in front of him. Tobias Pefeffer is up by 0.2 of a second, by the way. He finds himself only 0.3 off of pole, so if he can find an extra bit of time, maybe he could challenge for that front row of the grid. Here comes Vincent Ebrich, though, 1/10 up on his lap time. He's gained some into Parabolica. Will he gain any more on the exit? Comes up towards the timing line. Time has expired. Vincent Ebrich throws the Honda up into 4th. That's the highest he will go. And it's a valiant effort from the PCDC Motorsport guys to get that car as high up as possible. Here is Tobias Pefeffer, by the way. He's lost a bit of time since we last saw him. And I think he is still up by 1/10 of a second, though, in the BMW. Making his way towards the Parabolica now. Petrochenko in the McLaren is up by 0.2 of a second as well. He might have something to say about this as we come to the end of qualifying. This is it. This is going to be it, boys. It's last chance now. Tobias Pefeffer comes up towards the timing line. How much will he improve? He goes up to 3rd with the 187. BMW Petrochenko will throw his McLaren on 5th on the 3rd row of the grid. And an exciting qualifying session coming to an end.
Absolutely incredible stuff. A lot of these guys, all of these guys here today put it all on the line. That incredibly long but incredibly fruitful qualifying session. If the race is going to be half as good as that qualifying session was, well, then we are in for a treat. Qualifying done and dusted here for the 2 hours of Monza, and it was a thrilling event to watch. And now all that's left to do is 2 hours on one of the most famous racetracks in the world.
So whilst we await for the session to switch over to the race, I think it's about time that we do hear from our sponsors, Coaching at Crestani. Those Mercs, man.
Just remember, you have to name every single rubber bunny.
I know.
You keep calling him Ebrich. Is it Ebrich or Ebrich? Yeah. Yeah, he's also never complained, right? So I don't know. So it either means I'm saying it correctly, or he doesn't care. Also, something weird's going on now.
Are you going to lead us back in then, Jesse? Then you can free to me. Great.
David Cheezel. Just David Cheezel. Well, there you have it. A lovely lap around this place. David Chisa providing that for us, giving you a shot of what it looks like to drive a lap around this place. And I have to say, if you missed qualifying, you missed part of the show. It was fantastic to watch, and I cannot wait to get this race started. Only one thing left to do before we fire engines and roll off on that parade lap, Ryan, and that's to go through the driver order.
Indeed, Jesse, and it will be Giorgio Simonini that starts on pole position for this race. Nils Najoks alongside him on the front row. Tobias Pefeffer and Luca Lossio will be on the second row of the grid, with Jura Petrochenko and Vincent Urbrich on the third row of the grid. Kevin Saklari and Luka Wadalic on the fourth row, and Davide Chiesa and Michael Romagnoli round out the top 10. The rest of the order is Chris Hardfelt, Alberto Garcia, Federico Civilotti, Marcus Lawrence, Arthur Kramer, Amir Hosseini, Alberto Fornaciero, Maciej Melanowski, Jaroslav Honzik, Fabrizio Cristani, Ainara Rose, Samuele Spotto, Francesco Vencato, Tiano Brioni, Gerard Martinez Amer, Tuomas Tatela, Valentin Barrier, Igor Ogorodnikov, Gregor Schill, Nico Solman, and Vedi Maximilian.
Well, there you have it. Your grid of 30 cars, the vast majority of them, some 26 of them, all within a second of one another today. And now, with the imminent pace lap getting ready to start, nervous energy from all of these top drivers here today, all chasing glory on an incredibly cloudy day here at Monza, but we do not mind. Nice and warm, 20 degrees C on the track, 16 ambient, almost no wind to speak of, 1K out of the south. As they set off here, got to get the car shaken down, get ready to race here, because whenever you come back onto this front straightaway out of Parabolica, it is game faces on. Ryan, nervous energy, making sure you get the start, all these things racing through a driver's mind as they get ready to do battle here at Monza.
Yeah, the formation lap, such an important factor of the race. You've got to get the tires warmed up, the brakes warmed up. You've got to make sure that you get yourself focused. The only thing that can be in your mind is turn one. And that's going to be exactly what Giorgio Simonini has got in his mind. He'll have the best view down towards turn one. Everyone else behind him, they're going to be focusing on turn one, but more importantly, they're going to be focusing on the braking of the cars ahead of them. Always that concertina effect here at Monza. But of course, we do expect a clean start to this race. So many esports drivers involved in this event, and plenty of them that you and I have had the pleasure of commentating on before. We know that these guys can do it cleanly. It's just a matter of getting it right first time. But as all 30 of these cars make their way around, everything starting to come together here at Monza. 2 hours of racing not far away. We have a Jag on pole. We have a BMW alongside on the front row of the grid. The Lamborghinis and the Mercedes are carrying BOP weight added in addition to the regular ACC BOP. The Mercedes with an extra 15 kilos, the Lambos with an extra 10. And some of that being reflected in qualifying. We don't think it'll affect them as much in the race, Jesse. But one thing is clear as day, is that we don't have a single Mercedes or a Lamborghini in the top 10 after qualifying.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think it's going to matter too much in race pace. I think you're going to see a lot of the Mercedes coming up to the front. And there's one thing about that 39 Mercedes starting all the way back in 19th of Jardier, he doesn't mind starting in the field. He doesn't mind driving through the traffic. In fact, that's what he finds, I would assume, the most fun, because certainly he's done a number of last to first challenges before. He wasn't doing that today by any stretch, but of course he will have his work cut out for him starting in the middle of this pack. But the drivers getting ready to slow down here and form up 2x2 for the start and the run down into the infamous turn 1. Glad that you're all with us here today. Hope that you are having a great weekend wherever you are, and we hope that you are ready to watch 2 hours of racing here at Monza GT Racing. All the manufacturers you could ever ask for present here today. Have a Jaguar on pole as well. What could be finer than a Sunday racing here in Italy? I can't think of anything as they get ready to enter the Parabolica. Ryan, it is all to do now. Clean start, good start, but probably most importantly, safe start.
2x2, as far as the eye can see, they come up towards the timing line. The 2 hours of Monza Racing Line Motorsport, brought to you by DAIKO, is about to get underway. As you said, Jesse, a safe start is key here, but a lot of these guys just going to be thinking about getting a fast start. So here we go then, up towards the timing line. Hold your speed, hold your station, and we are live for 2 hours of racing at Monza. And it looks like Simonini's got a good start off, as well as he's already clear of the likes of Nils BMW as he tucks into the slipstream. A few guys further back going 3 wide, as I can see 2 Ferraris and a BMW. Now we come into the braking zone. How clean is it going to be? There's a Lamborghini off, and there's a Ferrari as well in the background off into the wall. A couple of cars.
Absolute bedlam in the chicanes. The chicane completely blocked now. Mini cars clearing. Cars still coming off the track. Cars backwards in the right-hander. But up front, it was a clean start from these 2 gentlemen here who have gotten away from the field ever so slightly. Erbrich getting involved in an early incident. A Lamborghini spun around that I can only assume was Hassini, and everybody scrambling to get away and get away cleanly and not damage their vehicle.
Luka Wadalic was one of the cars that I saw in the background going 3 wide with 2 Ferraris. He's dropped a couple of positions, but finds himself in 9th place at the moment. Vincent Erbrich in 3rd place, moving up. So good start from the Honda. But yeah, like you said, Jesse, quite a few cars caught up in that incident. It was definitely Hosseini in the 92 Lamborghini that we saw kind of flying off into the middle of the first chicane. But so far, so good for the leaders. Simonini and Nils Najoks got a perfect start to their race, and the Jag already starting to pull a gap from the BMW.
Well, that's what Nils wanted to do. Nils wanted to, first of all, keep contact with the Jag. He has to know how fast that thing is in a straight line. But that is the problem with the Jag. It's hard to keep up with on the straightaways because most cars, wherever you can get in that slipstream and slipstream them up to the corner, well, that's not really possible with the Jag because it is so slippery in the air. It's almost impossible to gain an advantage or draw even on the front straightaway, as we see Chiza here and Garcia going at it early in this race. And in the background there, saw several cars making moves down into turn 1. Looked like they all made it as well. So well held and driven down into turn 1 of lap 2. Mentioned earlier how I was a little bit worried about lap 2 would be the messy lap. Doesn't look like that fear is going to be realized here today. And look at this man right here. Talked about Jardier, Jaroslav Hanzik. He started 20th. He is already up to 10th. no doubt with that anime livery, it protected him, and he was able to get through some of the incidents that occurred in that first lap, and now threatening Hassini for ninth.
Jardier getting a very, very good start to his race, found himself down in 19th place at the start, now finds himself just inside the top 10 and closing down on Amir Hosseini, running the Triple FF livery that Jardier was so used to in the SRO Esports series. And of course, Jardier will know the strengths and weaknesses of that car all too well. Few guys coming in for some early pit stops, no doubt because of damage that they sustained down towards the first chicane. Of course, we do have a mandatory pit stop required for all of the drivers here today. That's the amber icon you can see next to their race number with a number 1 in it. And of course, there is specific criteria that they will need to fulfill. They'll be changing tyres throughout this race as well. You won't be doing 2 hours on a set of tyres around here. Not if you have to serve a mandatory pit stop as well. So a few of these guys having to pit early for damage. We do have live stewarding as well here today. That was discussed earlier on, but we mentioned it slightly. And they'll be looking at all the incidents around the circuit and handing out punishment as necessary. Meanwhile, in front of Arthur Kramer, action going on here as well as a BMW clatters into him. That's Wadelich. Way too ambitious into the first chicane on the brakes, and now I think that's Valentin Barrier that's been spun around as well in the number 72 Lexus.
Yeah,
and
that's
we're going to be switching to a replay here, Jesse, see if we can catch this.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened there. Is Wadelich got sort of in there hot, made contact with another car, and that was Valentin Barrier, who did get spun around. He was facing the wrong direction. As here we're going to see it. Look how far he is. They're going 3 wide in front of him. We're going to see exactly what happens. I suspect they slow each other down, and that's going to help Wadelich catch up to this group. Indeed, that is. And he's going to try and sneak down the inside. Actually, no, he was clattered into from behind. Oh, he was? I think he was clattered into from behind is what happened there, actually. And Barrier trying to gas it up on the curb, just spins it around. But I think he was able to get it going without further incident. But scary moment there down into turn one turning into Calamity Corner here early.
Yeah, a couple of the guys just getting a bit too ambitious, and we do have the first round of penalties, or the first penalty of the race coming out, and it was car 118 that was involved in this instance. That's Francesco Vencato, who's going to be given a 15-second penalty for an unsafe rejoin and multiple collisions. Collisions with car 41, 888, and 44. So that car going to be receiving a penalty early on here, and I'm sure there might be a couple of more coming our way, judging by what we've seen. But up at the front, Simonini still leads from Nils Najoks and then Vincent Erbrich in 3rd place. Meanwhile, Kevin Saklari, he's worked his way up into 4th, and here comes Petrochenko on the inside of Romagnoli. Is the McLaren going to have the better drive against the Ferrari? They're going to go side by side towards the second chicane, but the McLaren will win out. And it's 2 places dropped in the space of 2 chicanes for the number 17.
Well, Petrochenko just outmaneuvered in the outside. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like that. He was able to go to the outside, make the pass, and then block him into the chicane to keep him from coming back on him. He would have had a clear run, but it did not matter. And the 17 is going to have to settle for the 6th position right now and work on, not dropping any more spots. But Petrochenko, what a move around the outside, getting it done. It's not a move that I would be able to ever pull off, but keep getting, know that the stewards are busy working on some adjudication that was necessary from the opening couple of laps here. And I'm curious if we see anything that has the number 92 of Hassini's name on it, because I don't think he went sideways into turn 1 under his own power. I think, now I'm not a mind reader, Ryan, but I think he might have had some help.
Definitely possible as well. We talked about that Constantino effect down towards the first chicane. It's so easy to get caught out. Here is the number 27. This is Fabrizio Cristani for Team Lazarus in the Bentley, the only Bentley on the grid here today. And he's in 13th place at the moment. Davide Chiesa making his way past the Mercedes of Garcia up into 7th place, and you can start to see a couple of cars behind. And Jaroslav Honzik, something's happened to him, because he was right on the back of Amir Hosseini's number 92 Lamborghini, but he's now dropped back by a couple of seconds. So something definitely happened to him. Meanwhile, Gregor Schill in the Lexus 888 for the Coach Dave Academy starting to close down as well, as we continue to watch the 222 go around here. At the moment, he's going to be trying to get past Romagnoli next, and it seems that the number 17 Ferrari not able to escape from the clutches of the cars behind. It's been a bit of a sketchy start for the number 17. Meanwhile, Marcus Lawrence finds himself chasing Titella in one of the few Audis, I think the only Audi we have on the grid here today, and the Honda closing in ever more as they go down towards Ascari.
Yeah, the Audi not proving to be a very popular pick here today, but inside the top 15 is Titella, but he is going to be looked to the inside. Lawrence going down to the inside, getting it done in Ascari. Excellent pass and defending back out of the corner. Well done. Position gained for Lawrence. Titella will have to settle down for 15th place right now. But up front, I noticed that that gap has stabilized between the leader and Nils. It was as high as 1.3 seconds, and now it has stabilized here a little bit, if not come down. So I don't know if maybe the tires are just warmed up on that BMW, or maybe Simonini is relaxing the pace a little bit. Don't know. But one thing's for sure is that gap definitely was going out for the first couple laps, but has stabilized since. And it is an absolute logjam from about 5th place all the way back to 9th. These are the cars pictured here. Alberto Garcia right in the middle of this fight, trying to figure out a way to get by David Chiesa right now, who we saw in the track guide video before the race. So certainly he knows his way around here. He's trying to figure out a way to get around the number 17 Ferrari right now. As, again, if you get side by side around here, we didn't really talk about this at all, Ryan, but it's easy to pass around here, but it's also a great way to lose a ton of time.
Yeah, it definitely is. The amount of time that you spend trying to get past someone, you can easily make a mistake. Someone capitalizes on that, and you can see 2-3 cars fly past you just that fast. And I think the number 29 car of Marcus Lawrence has just had an incident at the second chicane. He's dropped down positions, I think down into 14th place, or no, he was moved up into 14th place. Sorry, he's dropped down to 22nd now. The timing board a bit delayed on my end. Apologies for that, but Marcus Lawrence maybe getting caught up in an incident. Maybe it was just a mistake, but the number 29 Honda now finding himself outside the top 20. Meanwhile, Wadelic in the 290 BMW has been given a 5-second penalty for that collision we saw with Kramer down towards the first chicane. And then the number 27 of Cristani has also been given a 5-second penalty for collision with Wadelic as well. So the number 290 involved in 2 incidents, one of which he has been found guilty of.
Yeah, indeed. That is such what will happen whenever you are racing in close quarters like this. Mistakes, accidents are absolutely going to happen. Stewards have handed out their verdict on those cases, and they will continue on. They do have a pit stop, and unless I'm very much mistaken, they can serve those penalties added on to the end of their pit stop. So that will not completely take any of those drivers out of the race, but it will dampen their spirits and hurt their pit time. Lights ablaze on some of these cars, letting them know that they would like to come through here. Hosseini being patient here in the number 92 Lamborghini. He's not really pressuring too hard, as they're going to be completely sideways in front of him. There's going to be a touch between the 2 Ferraris. Melee, and Hosseini goes hard into the wall. Out of the second, Lesmo absolutely demolished is that Lamborghini. He's going to pull the car hard onto the right, and I think that is going to be his day ended. Hard crash started with the 2. That was David Chiesa, and I think Romagnoli there, I think, come together, exiting the second Lesmo, and that was a bad moment.
Yeah, unfortunate for Hosseini. There wasn't much that he could do. And, well, unfortunately for the Lamborghini, like you said, Jesse, that car is wrecked. And I don't really think it's going to be going any further, or not any further up the grid in this race with any pace at least. Hosseini back in the pit lane. Jardia up to 7th because of those accidents that happened in front of him. So Jaroslav Honzik benefiting massively from some mistakes. Meanwhile, out front, the gap has been stable, hasn't it, of around 1 second to 1.2 seconds. But now Nils may be starting to reel it in a bit. It's just under a second now. And one of the things I'm starting to think of, Jesse, is that BMW. I've driven it around here at Monza before, and it does quite well on its tyres around this place. And I'm not too sure about the Jag, though. It's not really a car that gets used too often. We know it's quick in a straight line, but how are the tyres on that car going to be towards the end of the first hour of the race? And can Nils maybe use that to his advantage?
Well, in short, Ryan, the answer is yes. That Jag will eat its tires more than that BMW. That's just my personal experience. The Jag was my first main. I loved the Jag whenever ACC was first released. It was just so different. And unless something has dramatically changed to the Jag, and I don't think it has, I think it will eat its tires a little bit more than Nils's BMW. And that might be sort of what you're seeing here. And of course, Nils was under a second a moment ago, but now the gap has gone all the way back out to where it was before. So either Nils made a mistake or Simonini saw him coming and stepped on the gas a little harder. But I think those two are going to get ever closer as this run continues, and especially near the end of the hour mark, because I don't think that Jag is going to be as good on its tires as the big bad BMW.
Yeah, and we're just getting news as well that I think it was Kevin Saklari that's just gone off circuit. Petrochenko in 4th at the moment in the McLaren, doing well so far, and Vincent Ibrich, who's been notified, is dropping some pace to the cars in front. So the Honda doesn't quite have the ability to go with the BMW and the Jag out in front. And of course, it is one of the more unusual picks that we don't often see too much, but it is lovely to see the NSX out whenever possible, and the same for the 720S McLaren as well. Looking a bit further down, Luca Lossio for the Jean Alesi Academy in the Ferrari. He's had a bit of an up and down start to his race. I think he was a bit further up towards the end of qualifying. Sits 14th at the moment amongst a few people with some penalties as well. So he's going to be trying his best to make his way up. And I think Totella has just made a mistake coming out of the second chicane, and that's going to be an easy pass for Luca Lossio in the number 28, or it should be an easy pass, but he doesn't get the exit he wants, and this is going to be Totella's opportunity to take it back, and the Audi will take it back, as now Luca Lossio will look to get the drive down towards Ascari. The Audi going to be on the inside line, the preferred line. The Ferrari doesn't look to have the pace to drag race to the braking zone. Is he going to switch to the inside? Is he going to have the pace? No, not quite, as the BMW of Maximilian closes in. But well done there from Totella to take that place back as soon as he lost it.
Well, the race has not gone Wadalich's way, and the number 290 that he's driving has been given yet another 5-second penalty for causing a collision with the 117. So Wadalich now has 10 seconds of penalties that he will have to serve on his pit stop for those opening lap incidences. That lap was number 3 where this particular incident occurred. So a lot of these drivers now getting multiple points penalties, multiple time penalty, I should say. And this car right here, Verdi Maximilian, number 89, you may recall, started dead last today. 30th place, up inside the top 15, benefiting from other drivers' woes, stayed out of the early incidents and drama, and has now driven halfway through the field. Not bad for 18 minutes of work.
No, it's not bad as well, and of course in that BMW he'll have a lot of straight line speed over a couple of these guys. Luca Lossio making a mistake out of the second chicane, and look how easy Maximilian is just going to breeze past that Ferrari. The BMW straight line speed coming out of the corners, just being shown off there as he makes that look fairly easy, and I imagine he's going to start to pull away from Luca Lossio as well. Vencato behind in the 118 now is going to be looking at the back of that Ferrari with interest, going to be looking to get past as well. The BMWs haven't had a great start to the race. There was, I think, 3 or 4 of them in the top 10 at the start of the race, but of course, penalties and incidents haven't really gone their way. Nil's the only one left in the top 10, but he's doing well at the moment in second place as we carry on board here with Vencato to see, is Luca Lossio going to have another look on the inside? No, not quite, as Vencato closes back in now, but will the Ferrari have the ability to slipstream the BMW down the main straight? My guess is that it wouldn't be, but I've seen more strange things happen before. But you've got to look behind for Vencato now, because the pace of that BMW is coming, and look, it's almost as if the BMW has DRS over the Ferrari. Going to come side by side down into the first chicane, not going to have the inside line for the chicane, and Luca Lossio will live to fight another day in 15th place.
Well, I gotta tell you, there's absolutely fantastic battling there, nice respectful driving, and these camera angles, these very dynamic, wonderful angles that show you perhaps a different way to view the race, maybe in this case sort of what the driver sees. We didn't mention it at the top of the show, but our showrunner and camera operator producer today, Mike Jones, bringing you the tale of the tape today, doing an excellent job. The splitter cams, the in-car cams, the panning shots, all of that by Mr. Mike Jones, and doing just a fantastic job. This is fantastic to watch. It's almost a shame I have to talk. I'd love to just sit and watch this. Ryan, you can attest. I'm sitting here wiggling in my chair when these guys are getting side by side. They're getting so close to one another, and they're pulling it off. Again, what would you expect from a race called the Alien Race, if you will? And these are some of the best esports pros and aliens in the business here, doing battle just about 6 p.m. here in Monza in Italy. 18 degrees C is the track temp. That is falling a bit with the evening. 16 degrees ambient. It has cooled off. We expect that to continue. And I'm not sure, are we going to race into darkness tonight?
It's definitely a possibility with an hour and, well, just under an hour and 40 minutes left of the race. It's currently 6 local time in the sim. We're going to be finishing closer to 8 o'clock. And I get the feeling that a couple of these guys have got their lights on already, and a few of those that don't are probably going to have to be switching them on soon. But, oh, the Jag getting very friendly. I think that was Chris Hartfeld getting very, very friendly with the back of the BMW of Vencato there, and you can see Valentin Barrier in the 72 Lexus behind as well. Of course, he spun at the first chicane. I think that was on lap 2 or 3. He's trying to recover whatever he can from this race. But the Jag getting so close to the back of Vencato, and that's one of the problems you run into here at Monza with some of the cars that have much greater straight line speed power, is you often have to find yourself braking much earlier than you would usually have to in some of the other cars to compensate for that extra straight line speed, especially if you're getting a tow off the car in front.
Yes, indeed. We're talking about Marcus Lawrence earlier about how he had fallen off of his battle, and actually are receiving information that he had several impacts from different cars and incidents that he was caught up in. So that's why he has fallen out of the picture and the conversation as the car goes completely sideways. Did they lose it? They might have done. Hidden behind that gantry there, could not see. But there appeared to be, yes, that Jag was completely sideways. I don't think they actually lost it, but they are going to lose this position here to Valentin Barrier. So position lost because coming out of Ascari, they got all sorts of sideways in the dirt. But if you're wondering where Lawrence is, the reason he is not part of this conversation, he has 40 seconds of damage after multiple incidents involving other cars where he was struck.
Yeah, and of course, a couple of guys retiring already from the race. We saw Hosseini's Lamborghini get absolutely destroyed, and it's no surprise that he's retired from the race as well. couple of other guys in the pit lane and a few retirements early on. You do unfortunately expect it here at Monza. The nature of this circuit, incidents happen, and well, we saw the incident with the Jag, didn't quite see the incident with Chris Hartfeld's Jag on his own, but just an example there at Ascari of how easy it is to lose the car. And that could easily have been race over for him, but he gets to continue onwards. Meanwhile, out in front, the gap still stabilizing itself around 1.2 to 9/10 of a second between these guys here. I think Nils going a bit wide there in Parabolica, maybe losing a bit more time, but I think until we get towards the end of this first stint, Jesse, we're not realistically going to see how well Simonini has kept the tyres on that car. And judging by how hard Nils is pushing to keep with the Jag, I would have to say that Simonini is probably not focusing on tyre saving right now.
No, he's got to be on it here. This is not a safe gap. 1.2 seconds. It can evaporate just like that. He has to keep the foot on the accelerator pedal, and Nils in the background in the BMW. I think, yeah, he might have missed Parabolic a little bit. That also is a strategy you can employ, going around the outside to carry as much speed as possible on that front straightaway, trying to negate the straight line speed advantage of that Jaguar. But here's Vincent Urbrich. He's just kind of been hanging out here. He's fallen off behind Nils. He's not under any sort of threat from the 26 McLaren behind him. He's just sort of on his own island here in third place, doing the best that he can, and doing it in a Honda top three, two cars that we wouldn't normally think of seeing around here. Of course, the Jaguar and the Honda, but going well.
Yeah, the Jag going well here indeed. Davide Chiesa finds himself in 10th place at the moment, the 222 for the Racing Line Motorsport team, and having a bit of a moment there out of the second Lesmo as he makes his way down towards Ascari now. And we are going to be switching in just a moment to an onboard lap with our leader here, Giorgio Simonini. So here you can take an onboard lap mid-race with the 150 Jag, crosses the line and makes his way all the way down towards turn one. Such a long run here at Monza. Wants to be braking around the 150 meter board into the first chicane. Don't clip the inside curb on the first part of the chicane. Use the second part of the chicane to turn the car. Don't go right onto the right-hand side of the track here. Stick a bit left to avoid those bumps, and you make your way through Curva Biasono. Now committed here with these cars completely flat, no lifting required. Watch out for the little orange marker on the right-hand side. That'll be your braking reference for the second chicane. Hold as much speed as you can. Don't go wide onto the gravel. And then prepare yourself for the Lesmos. Another orange marker there to serve as your braking reference. Go as wide as you can here. Don't touch the grass. It will slow you down. Brake around the 50 meter board if it's still there. Don't go too far onto the right of the curve. Go as wide as possible on the exit. And now you'll make your way down towards Ascari through Seraglio under the tunnel of the old circuit. And now here at Ascari, around the 100 meter board you want to be braking. Take as much of the inside curb as your suspension will allow you to do. Committed on the exit here, taking as much of that anti-cut as he dares. Doesn't go on to the gravel. Nice and wide. And now the run down towards the Parabolica for the final time to complete the lap. Braking just about the 100 meter board. Wants to be so committed and tight here. You find the apex around another orange marker on the barrier. Don't go too wide, as you will invalidate your lap and slow yourself down. Hug as much as you can towards the right-hand side of the track, and that is a lap with your race leader around here at Monza.
Absolutely well commentated by Ryan Gill there, and well ran by Simonini as we look out the back. And that BMW is definitely closer than he was a few laps ago. Something interesting that has happened, the stewards have handed us slips of paper with the penalties on them, and something that I'm not accustomed to seeing. There was an incident on lap 7 involving the 222, the 17, and the 92. 5-second penalty awarded for both the 222 and a 10-second penalty for the 17 for a combination of collision, unsafe rejoin by the 17, and then a collision by the 222. So one incident, 2 penalties from 2 cars deemed at fault for playing a role in it in a 3-car incident, Ryan. We don't get too many of those where we're from, but it's actually really, it's nice to see them be able to take care of that and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, sometimes you do have incidents with 3 or 4 individuals involved where, you know, there is more than just one party at fault. And, you know, you do need to penalize that sometimes. We've seen it in plenty of live stewarding scenarios before. Someone gets a penalty and, you know, maybe the other driver gets a warning as well. But, yeah, a bit unusual to see 2 penalties come out. But, of course, the steward's doing a fantastic job here today, making sure that all the incidents are judged accordingly, and to make sure that the right penalties are dealt out on track. We're watching on board here on the splitter cam for Titella in the 107 Audi, the only Audi on the grid. Did verify that. And he's trying to keep up with the 89 BMW of Maximilian. Of course, he started all the way at the back of the grid, 30th place, up into 13th right now. And as someone who recently at Monza also had to start near the back of the grid and ended up in the top 10, I can definitely vouch for how hard it is to do that. It doesn't matter if you have a car that's quicker in a straight line. You need to push all the way throughout the race. I did it in the course of a 60-minute race. He's got to do it for 2 hours in that car, but doing a fantastic job right now, as here we can see Martinez Amer closing down on Davide Chiesa. Of course, that 5-second penalty for Chiesa will mean that the Mercedes is effectively running ahead of the Ferrari. He's just got to stay with him, and, well, when it comes to the round of pit stops, he'll be overtaking him in the pit lane.
Yes, indeed. Of course, a lot of these drivers deemed to have gone too far in the race and been given a penalty by the stewards here at Racing Line Motorsports, but that will not deter them one bit. That definitely is not going to deter David Chiesa here. He's going to continue to try and get a gap. Meanwhile, up front, Simonini and Nils still fluctuating that gap. Sometimes it's inside a second, sometimes it's 1.3. No real headway being made by any of those drivers. Ehrbrich continues to fall back off of the lead 2, down to 4.6 seconds back now. And of course, but he is not losing time to 4th place. That gap fairly stable, if not going out in the favor of the number 12 Honda. A lot of battles still persisting here, and a couple of drivers who have fallen off our timesheet because they've done so have actually come in and done their pit stop, I'm pretty sure, unless those cars just went to pit road and are sitting there. But one way or another, pit stops feasibly for a lot of these guys still, I would say, about 20-30 minutes out.
Yeah, you're not really going to be coming in to serve your mandatory pit stop with that tire change until you're at least reaching the 1 hour mark. You don't really want to be taking tires any longer than necessary, and some of these cars, they work their tires harder than others. The Lexus, one of those cars in particular. A few of the Lexus drivers probably hoping for rain right now, but I can look at the forecast and tell you that at least for the next 15 minutes, there is no rain forecast, just continuing the cloudy weather that we have here at Monza. But the cloudy weather has not dampened the action on track. It's still been fairly good here. As we can see, Valentin Barrier, he's got a bit of damage on his rear wing there, Jesse, that you can see. A few scratches on the back of the Lexus. Now, we did see him spin around, of course, at the first chicane, but I'm not entirely sure if anyone had contact with him. So Valentin Barrier definitely carrying some damage on that Lexus, but it doesn't look like it's slowing him down too much.
Yeah, I think Mr. Barrier got in a sort of a fender bender earlier in the race. I don't think it happened when he spun it around in turn 1. I think somebody was into the back of him earlier, Ryan, that caused that damage there, but very well present on the back and very well spotted by you as well. Kevin Siclari Fifth place in the number 7 Racing Line Motorsports Ferrari in that very, very nice blue, black, and white sort of affair on that car. Going well, he might actually be catching up to the McLaren in front of him ever so slightly. I do believe that gap was bigger a few laps ago. We'll have to pay attention to that as penalties continue to flow here. Got a new one to mention to you. The 27 and the 181 had a collision on the 11th lap. Stewards have awarded a 5-second penalty for the 27, causing a collision with the 187 on that lap. So unfortunate for them. So I think that is their second penalty. I think that's going to be a total of 10 seconds, Ryan.
Yeah, unfortunately so. A couple of drivers accumulating more penalties, and the 187 was actually Tobias Pefeffer in the BMW, and he's had to retire from the race, I've been told. So unfortunate for the likes of Tobias Pefeffer that penalty that is handed out won't really bring any justification for him. Meanwhile, Valentin Barrier, he's got past Maximilian, and now it's going to be looking like Hartveld wants to do the same in the Jag. He's got Totella right behind him, but look at that. That was so close from Maximilian onto the back of the Lexus. The Lexus doesn't really have the straight line speed that the BMW has, but Valentin Barrier throwing that car around the circuit and trying to get the most that he can out of this race. Of course, recovering from that spin earlier on up into 13th place at the moment. It's looking pretty good for Valentin Barrier, but he's going to have to watch himself on these next couple of straights and make sure that Maximilian in that BMW doesn't just rock up to the back and breeze past him.
Yeah, and it's a long way to 12th place. Kramer in that 62 BMW too, so he has got a long road to go to catch up to them, but he's also being stalked by all of these drivers. We talked about Verdi Maximilian earlier in this 89 BMW. He started 30th. That was dead last in this field today. And he's in 14th looking for 13th place. I gotta ask, did he just not qualify on purpose? Where did this pace come from?
I don't think it was a case of not qualifying, on purpose. I mean, he set a 147.5 in qualifying, Jesse. It was the slowest lap of qualifying. And, with the kind of field that we have out here today, I don't think anyone's going to be intentionally qualifying towards the back of the grid. But Maximilian doing a very, very good job here as well. And he's just going to try and follow the likes of Valentin Barrier in suit. Nothing has changed out in front, by the way. Simonini and Nils Najoks still find themselves about 1.2, 1.3 seconds apart. Meanwhile, Vincent Erbrich in third place, like you said, Jesse, dropping back from these guys and still extending the lead that he has from Petrochenko in the McLaren. And Kevin Saklari holds himself 1.5 seconds behind the McLaren. 6 different manufacturers in the top 6 at the moment. And if we extend that down to the top 10, I believe we have 8 different manufacturers in the top 10. Incredibly competitive here at Monza, despite the dependence on straight line speed.
Well, it's about that time in the race. Things quieting down for some of the drivers, but the engine's still very, very large and a lot of racing left here to go. We like to do a little special thing in a lot of the races we do. We call it Crank It Up, where we just stop talking for a few moments and we listen to some of the engines. You're watching the DAIKO 2 Hours of Monza, the alien race here on Racing Line Motorsport. And what do you say, Ryan? How about we just listen to the soothing sounds of these engines for a little bit? there you have the sights and the sounds of the race here. Riding along quite a bit here with Fabrizio Cristani here of the Cristani Driving School. Doing well, top 10. Wasn't in the top 10 earlier. Is now fighting Schill in front of him. Of course, Cristani has picked up a few penalties, but that's not going to deter him one bit from climbing further up into the top 10 here.
Yeah, doing very well, of course, in the lone Bentley that we have out here today. And, of course, with the DAIKO sponsorship on the side of the car. And, of course, DAIKO, courtesy of providing some of the action here today with Racing Line Motorsport. And, of course, I'm glad to have Jesse Lee alongside myself, Ryan Gill. We are 40 minutes into this race, an hour and 20 to go, Jesse. We've made it a third of the way through the race. We've had some incredible overtakes. We've had quite a bit of action already in terms of incidents, and penalties have been handed out as well. And we cut now to Veddy Maximilian, who of course started last, started 30th in this pack, now finds himself 15th. He's dropped a couple of places since the high of 13th that he found himself, but still doing very well indeed.
Yeah, you have to wonder how much he was pushing his tires, or maybe it was just unfortunate. Maybe people caught him at the wrong time and he had to give up the spot, but definitely looks right now like he's falling back a bit. Be interested to see if he is able to catch back up to Hartveld in front of him and make that pass again. Could have just been simply having a bad corner. That's all it takes around here, especially with how little tolerance there is between the times. So could have been anything. We will pay attention to that. And one other thing I'm paying attention to is Kevin Seclari in that number 7 Ferrari. He is lap after lap catching Petrochenko in front of him, but speak of the devil, he does go off there a little bit. Doesn't seem like he's any worse for wear, but that'll teach me to talk about somebody going fast, right?
Need to be so careful, and it's, well, Ascari again, isn't it? Where people are starting to have problems, and like I said, you need to have your car set up for that part of the track, or you will start getting hurt. And of course, it's one of those corners that you can practice it as many times as you like, you'll never get it perfect. But Kevin Seclari continues on in 5th place. He has lost time to Petrochenko. The gap is now 2.9 seconds. Meanwhile, Fabrizio Cristani continues to chase down Gregor Schill in the Coach Dave Academy Lexus. And the Bentley trying to make itself known here. Ooh, just to say, catching the grass into the braking zone. Seen plenty of bad accidents after doing that before, but fortunately for Cristani, he'd already slowed the car down enough to the point where it didn't really make that much of a difference, but he is carrying 10 seconds worth of penalties here. So even if he does get past the likes of Gregor Schill, the Lexus driver won't be too concerned.
Yeah, if he gets too close to him, Cristani, that is, I imagine Schill won't fight him too terribly hard, considering they've been sort of locked in this battle for the first part of this race. As you see, Lucas Lacio getting a little out of sorts into the first chicane. Getting it all sorted, though, doesn't look any worse for the wear, and continues his pursuit of Wadelich in front of him, who has a penalty as well. A lot of these drivers struggling early with penalties, causing collision. The Racing Line stewards all on top of it, including one of the more recent ones, 5-second penalty for the 107, causing a collision with the 29 car that was on the 6th lap of the race. So the 107 getting a 5-second penalty for causing a collision. It's just another in a long list of casualties here. Again, so difficult, easy to race here, but difficult to pull off a squeaky clean pass due to well, the corners here. It's a tough mistress, this track.
It definitely is a tough track to master, isn't it? They always say easy to learn, difficult to master. You can apply that definitely to Monza, and of course we continue watching here the BMW trying to close down on the Jag. It's always frustrating when you find yourself in a car with a lot of straight line speed power and you come up towards someone in the exact same car or in a car that has, you know, very, very similar qualities to yours and it has same strengths where you do. You always feel like you just can't close down quick enough on them and you'll never get the overtake done. And I get the feeling that Maximilian starting to kind of get that feeling here at the moment as Chris Hartveld's Jag is just a bit too quick on the straights and holding the BMW M6 at bay.
Where I'm from, we call this purgatory for Maximilian. He knows that he's faster than this car in the corners. He can hang with him on the straight, but that Jag just keeping him at bay. So that's basically purgatory where he is. He just can't quite get by, and he's already had to make this pass once on Hartfeld, and now he's got to do it all over again. But he's doing it smartly. He's not overdriving the corner. He's not over anxious. He's in definite control of his machine, and he's probably, if I was him, waiting for Hartfeld to make a mistake. Something similar to that, though Maximilian does go off as well. But that's all it's going to take, a little maneuver like that. It doesn't have to have a crash, just has to slow him down ever so slightly. And then he will be presented with an opportunity. Gap up front is as even as it can be since the start of this race, folks, some 40 minutes ago. There has been no change really in the gap. It has gone out and in slightly as we are on the back of Simonini's car looking back at Nils' BMW. This has pretty much been the gap since the start. This is what endurance racing is all about, and this is why I love it. Two cars that are very different. Two cars that are from realistically different eras of GT racing as Nils goes completely off the track in the Lesmo and absolutely saves it from the wall, almost making contact, gets it back on the track, and for the first time since the opening lap, something happens between the top two and Nils blinks first.
Wow, incredibly well saved there from Nils Najoks, and of course he'll be frustrated because he knew that he was keeping up with the Jag in front. Now it's a 4-second gap between himself and the leader. He's not the only one to make a mistake as of recent laps, though. You'll notice that Gregor Schill has fallen behind Cristani. That was because of a mistake in Ascari that the 888 has dropped behind the Bentley. So a few of the more experienced guys now that we don't usually see making mistakes starting to blink first, as Jesse was saying, and well, unfortunately for Nils, he's now got quite a gap between himself and Simonini. But, you know, an hour and 13 minutes of this race remain. Anything can happen, and I'm willing to bet that sooner or later that Jag's weaknesses are going to start to show.
Well, I can tell you something else. We have had a penalty turned in that happened on the first lap of the race. 5-second penalty for the 28 car causing a collision with the 187. So 5-second penalty for the 28. That's Lacio who's picked up a penalty. That penalty happened 45 minutes ago, but it has been turned in and he will have to serve that on his pit stop. We're still a little bit out from pit stops, I would assume. I don't think anybody's going to want to pit early here. And my personal opinion is you pit early here, you lose at the end of the race. Why not split it halfway down the middle? What do you think, Ryan Gill?
I think it depends, really. I mean, if you're finding yourself in a bit of traffic with some slower cars that you're struggling to overtake, I think pitting early is a good idea. George Smith, a good friend of ours, would always promote that idea, but you've got to be careful when you do it, because obviously you don't want to pit too early, like you said, or you put yourself for the final stint of the race on tires that might have gone 75 minutes, and no one really wants to be on tires that have gone 75 minutes. So you want to push it as close to an hour as possible. I think realistically, probably with about 65 minutes of the race remaining, we'll start to see the first round of pit stops happening. And of course, you know, 65 minutes on the set of tires isn't too bad. But some of the cars like the Lexus you might find are going to try and hit that even 1 hour mark because there's no advantage for them going into the pit stop early just to force themselves onto another set of tyres even later in the race.
Well, one thing that I am really impressed about talking about tires is that how well that Jag seems to be doing on tires and pace. Nils, again, was in a dead heat with him and now has entered in a dead heat again. The only difference now is that instead of 1.3 seconds out, he's 3.8 seconds out, and he actually might be gaining ever so slightly. So it's possible that Nils may have not been going as quickly or as fast as he possibly could have been, maybe saving the tires. We'll have to keep up to date on that to see if the gap goes back out. It typically does on the straightaway. That might be what we're seeing here in the second and first sector. So yeah, they're pretty much dead even. I suspect that gap will go back out to 4 seconds on the straightaway at the Parabolica, but this is a very close battle regardless. And again, 4 seconds, Ryan, with that pit stop, absolutely nothing between them.
So we were talking about pitting, and the pit window is now open. So this is when you're going to be serving your mandatory pit stop for your tyre change. And of course 20 minutes to serve it. So like I said, Jesse, you don't really want to be pitting too early. I don't really think we'll see many people coming into the pits right away. I think they're going to realistically be waiting until, you know, at least 55 minutes into the race. I'd be very surprised to see anyone come in right now. And as I look down towards the pit lane, we can see here from the commentary box, I don't really see anyone making any gestures towards the pit lane yet. And I think it's probably going to stay that way for another couple of laps at least. But it's going to be interesting to see who decides to go long on these tyres, Jesse. Who decides to go further than an hour on these tyres? Because whoever's saved their tyres, and, you know, maybe they're not in too bad shape, they can go a bit longer. And then that means they'll have much fresher tyres for the second stint of the race that they can push much more aggressively for the last 50 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely so. And that's also a strategy. We won't likely know how that's going to pan out until, well, probably about an hour from now. We haven't talked much about Jaroslav Hanzik in the past 30 minutes or so. He started in 20th place. We last saw him when he was entering the top 10. He's up to 7th place. The gap between him and Garcia in front is stable at about 13.5 seconds. But well done to him. He's in front of all of the drivers that, he started behind. So it's very interesting. He is sort of locked into this 7th place. Look for him to be one of those drivers that maybe takes a swing at this thing for pit strategy. Maybe he'll come in a little early, try and do the old overcut. Don't know. But that is Jardier's style for sure.
Jardier, of course, finding himself in a bit of no man's land. We do have a couple of people coming into the pit lane fairly early on here. Kramer and Weidelich, as well as Luca Lossio coming into the pit lane. So a few of these guys are deciding to come in early. Maybe damage being a factor there, coming in and getting that damage repaired as quick as possible. Also for a couple of them, like Luca Lossio, penalties and, well, Weidelich as well for that matter, could be a factor. Want to get those out of the way as quick as possible. Know your true running order in the pack and start to get your head down and focus on your position. But only a couple of people coming in early here for their pit stops. It's going to be interesting to see how they go now further into the race. Davide Chiesa in 11th place at the moment, still carrying that 5-second penalty as well. He's found himself with a bit of traffic, though, hasn't he, here? With, I think that's 19th place Civolotti just in front of him in the 170. So the leaders, or not really even the leaders, starting to come across some traffic as well. And he's got quite a significant gap to the car in front, does he have? Or is that the number 14 in front of him with the Mercedes? It is.
Yeah, that is Martinez Amir in front of the lapped car. The 170 is sort of the wedge between the two of them right now. And for David Chiza, you just got to be happy that you're seeing other cars and you're getting ready to enter a battle with them. Nothing worse than being in no man's land here. And of course, if you're catching up to people in front of you, you're going the right way. Look at David Chiza just digging off the corner in the first Lesmo there. Or excuse me, not in the Lesmo. That was a Scari. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, now going into Parabolica, you just got to be careful, because if you overdrive even the slightest little bit and you go over that curb into the dirt, not only are you slowing yourself down, but if you make any bad movement on the steering wheel, you're also going to spin yourself around. How many times have we already seen that? We saw that with second place Nils just going way too deep into the corner and nearly taking himself out of the race entirely. He is actually losing a bit of time now, is Nils, on the Jaguar. He's lost about 0.3 over the last 2 laps, so he's not hemorrhaging time necessarily, but he is losing time. So maybe Nils has used his tires more than Simonini has at this point.
It's entirely possible, and it's going to have to be something that we explore over the next 15 minutes as the pit window continues to tick down. The first 5 minutes have gone. Only 3 drivers have come in to serve that mandatory pit stop. And this is the time around where you start to see a couple of more people commit to those pit stops. But I think a lot of these guys are going to be waiting for the hour mark. They're going to want to try and split their strategy on fuel, well, not fuel, but on the tires evenly. Of course, they will have to refuel. None of these cars will be going 2 hours into the race without fueling. But the tire strategy's starting to become a bit more obvious now for a few of these guys. We're watching Kevin Seclari close in on Petrochenko. 0.7 of a second is the gap now between the Ferrari and the McLaren. He's been closing it down ever so slightly. He did make a mistake earlier, which caused him to lose time, so that has delayed this attempt for an overtake from Kevin Seclari. But there's one thing for sure, that the Ferrari is closing down onto the number 26 McLaren.
Well, Petrochenko must have made a mistake, because he was 2 seconds clear and actually gapping Seclari at one point, and we didn't get to see it, but something absolutely must have happened. Maybe the tires were just gone on the McLaren. Maybe he dipped a tire off into the dirt, missed a corner, ramped over one of those sausage curbs. No way of telling, but he gained 1.5 seconds in about a lap. So something has happened there that has caused them to get closer. We have several cars, or one car, I should say, coming in. That's going to be Gergo Schill, will be one of the first takers here of the leading group. 888's going to come down and get their tires fuel and satisfy their pit requirement. Maybe even a little bit of damage repair if they see fit, as Seclari still on the back of Petrochenko right now, looking to grab that 4th spot. It's been a long time coming for Seclari. He could possibly get this done before the stop, the pit stop that is, but will Petrochenko go ahead and pit right now after holding him up? That actually might be the best thing for the 26.
It depends realistically on how well can Petrochenko defend from Kevin Seclari, because if he can keep Seclari behind him, it's in his best interest to stay out as long as possible. But like I was mentioning earlier, if you find yourself stuck behind a car, it could be the better decision to pit early, try and undercut them. And we're going to have to see, is Kevin Seclari going to commit to a pit stop this time round? Doesn't look like it, and he's going to continue onwards, chasing down that McLaren. But if Petrochenko can hold up Kevin Seclari, he can kind of make this work. But look at the pace that Ferrari has on the inside line. Kevin Seclari going to get it done before the corner, nice and late on the brakes. And well, I kind of get the feeling that Petrochenko, if he wanted to try and keep that position, he needed to ideally pit on that lap or the lap before, but it's not going to happen now. The McLaren going to attempt to slipstream the Ferrari back to try and take the position. Seclari will go to the inside line, and the position will be defended.
I gotta say, though, I did not think Petrochenko was going to have a counter attack on Seclari, but here it is, and here he comes again. The drive off the corner of that McLaren is absolutely incredible. Mike Jones providing the backward shot of Seclari's car, looking at Petrochenko. Lovely stuff. You can see just how much that McLaren gains off of corner exit. It is an amazing amount of pace, but in the corner and sort of in the center of the corner, and it looks like down the straightaway as well, that Ferrari just has the legs. But done and dusted before you even get to turn one. That was a crisp and clean pass, and everybody, including me, taking notes on how to get that done before you even get to the corner. But Seclari now has won that position. Now, it's going to be interesting. Does Seclari pit this time? This is exactly halfway into the race. This would be the perfect time to pit if you were looking to split it up. We're going to see, does he duck down pit road at halfway, or does he go long? He looks like he is coming down pit road. No, he isn't. He just gets as far to the right as possible. Neither driver pitting yet. Both of them committing to having a shorter second stint, Ryan.
Yeah, and a shorter second stint is ideally what you want as a driver. If you can take those tyres a couple of laps longer and just alleviate some of the pressure from the second stint, you're always going to find yourself in a more favourable position. This is our race leader, by the way, still going round, lapping in the 1:47.4s for their laps. An incredibly consistent pace from these guys out front. 5.4 seconds now, the gap between himself and Nils. So your theory, Jesse, of the BMW might have used up more of its tyres than the Jag earlier on in the race, starting to come to fruition now. And it's looking good for Giorgio Simonini at the moment. 33 laps in the books, halfway through the race. 59 minutes, 30 seconds. Still has to serve that mandatory pit stop, but assuming nothing goes wrong with the pit stop, it's looking very, very probable for a Jag win here today at Monza.
Well, we had some people talking about how miraculous it would be if Simonini could pull this off and win in a Jag, a car that is ignored for BOP and is outdated here by several years. But such is these one-off races that whenever a car is good, it can become king at tracks like this. And you got to feel for Nils. He was within 2 seconds, and after his incident, he was within 4 seconds, but he has dropped a subsequent 1.5 seconds. Nils will go through as Simonini does come into pit road at 59 minutes to go to get his pit stop taken care of. Petrochenko, Abramovich will also come in to get their stops taken care of. Again, Nils goes through, and Seclari also continues to go through. Not done with their stint are the drivers of the number 1 and the number 7, continuing on as they have 8 minutes left to do that pit stop. And 7:21 p.m. in sim time, the temperature continuing to fall. Could that be what is hampering Nils's pursuit of a win here today? No wind to speak of, but track and ambient temperature sitting idle at 14°C as we plunge ever closer into twilight here in Italy. Track still optimum, no change in the weather foreseen, still all cloudy. It's just getting cooler, and Simonini does come out of pit road, standard pit stop there. Service is done. Got to get the tires back up to temperature, and surely he will be the leader whenever everything cycles through. But I got to ask, we started at 20-something degrees track temperature, Ryan. It's down to 14. That's a significant change. Could that be part of Nils' struggles to this point?
It could definitely be a factor. I mean, you have to remember that the tire pressure on these cars that they have, it's so important to your lap time. Not having, enough pressure in the car, if your tire pressure is too low or too high, it can significantly affect your consistency, especially towards the end of a stint. Of course, we're seeing Nils coming into the pit lane right now. But I've definitely had scenarios before myself where I've, got ready for a race. I've put the tire pressure in, I've calculated it, and I've thought, yep, I'm thinking it's pretty good. And you've got halfway into the race and you've realized that the temperature has changed so much that your tire pressure is now all over the place and you're having to deal with inconsistency corner by corner. And here at Monza, with some of these corners like Ascari, that's so difficult to deal with. You need to have a consistent feeling with the car lap after lap to get the best out of it. And, you know, you're 100% right, Jesse. It could be that tire pressure has played a factor here with Nils. Of course, he did go off as well and got quite close to the barrier, but of course, we're not really expecting any damage on that car, so that's not slowing him down. But it could be that his tire pressure, you know, had a bit of a play with his performance later on in his stint. Nils making his way out of the pit lane now. Simonini going to breeze past the BMW before he makes his way off the pit limiter. And like you said, Jesse, Simonini going back in front of the number 1 BMW. Will the gap be the same, or will it have increased? Judging by what I'm seeing down here, it looks like it's going to have increased.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of it. He was hemorrhaging time, was Nils, so it's not, you know, anything out of the ordinary that I would expect that he would be further behind. He also may have had an ever so slightly slower stop for whatever reason as well. No, in fact, he did not. He actually gained time according to that split in pit road, or exiting pit road. We'll see if that continues to update one way or another, but I just want to fangirl for a second. I love where sim racing is right now. With 5 minutes left to go in the pit window, you have to pit in the window. Otherwise, I think you just get straight up disqualified at the end of the race is what I think happens. Either that or it's a massive time penalty. Either way, I love where sim racing is now, where we get to talk about this sort of thing where as this race has progressed for the first hour, as it will progress for the final 54 minutes, we're talking about the tire pressures having a realistic impact on the atmospheric pressure in the wind and damage and setting up your car for certain atmospheric conditions. I love it how close to the real thing we get with sim racing. We are absolutely spoiled.
We definitely are, and someone who is also fairly spoiled is the likes of the Jag in front of Simonini. He's got an increased gap on the BMW at the moment, everything just going his way. In fact, 5.1 seconds is now the gap between himself and Nils and Jux. We're seeing Kevin Seclari work his way out of the pit lane as well in the number 7 Ferrari. And there he goes off the pit limiter. Is he going to be able to keep himself in check with the likes of Vincent Erbrich? He's going to be pretty close, actually, to the Honda. So did Erbrich lose time in the pit stop? Yes, he did. He lost about 4 seconds to the likes of Kevin Seclari. So a slow stop there from Vincent Erbrich, and that has brought Kevin Seclari well into play here. You can just see the Ferrari in the background there, and as the Honda continues onwards, the potential podium place here for the number 12 PCDC Motorsport car is under threat now.
Yeah, Erbrich will have known that he lost time in pit road. The driver always seems to know when they leave time on the table, and that's exactly what Seclari wants to see. He's like, wait a minute, you're closer than you were before. This is what I'm talking about. So he is having fun, and now he has somebody to chase. Jardier and Petrochenko also lost a couple of seconds in pit road, and David Chiesa lost 20 seconds in pit road. I imagine he repaired some damage or something on that car, because you would not lose 20 seconds like that otherwise. So I imagine there were additional repairs. Valentin Berrier lost 9 seconds as well, unknown if that was a slow stop or repairs as well. But pit cycle coming to an end. Also, Kramer, and I'm being told, Kramer and Schill lost 11 seconds and 20 seconds respectively. So a lot of slow stops. At this point, I'm going to assume that that's damage repair.
I think it's the most likely scenario, isn't it? Damage repair. A couple of them had penalties, though. Davide Chiesa, the 222, did have a 5-second penalty, I believe. So he'll have lost some time to the others regarding penalties. And I think it was maybe the same for Kramer as well. So a couple of these guys obviously serving their penalties. But yeah, I think the majority of it is probably going to be damage, especially for Valentin Barrier. He hasn't had a penalty, and he was 9 seconds slower in his pit stop. That is definitely damage. So, you know, a few of these guys having to repair that damage now. And, well, the pit window, just a minute and a half remaining. Civolotti and Solman the only ones left to serve their mandatory pit stop. Solman in the pit lane right now, whereas Civolotti will have to come in this lap to serve his mandatory pit stop. He can't go again before the pit window closes. He just will not have the time, so he's going to be getting that done on this lap. And then the true order of things will finally be reflected amongst everyone on circuit. But one thing we could tell you even before the pit stops had started was that Simonini was leading the way from Nils Najox, and then Vincent Erbrich in third place. But that third place now starting to come under threat from Kevin Seclari, as Seclari's just taken another 2/10 out of the Honda on the previous sector.
Absolutely flying is Seclari. He didn't necessarily qualify where he would have liked to have been, but hey, whenever qualifying is as tight as it was here today, you kind of have to take it on the chin, and certainly he has. He has been fighting his way back up through this field. He has avoided incidents, he's dodged incidents, and he has had a couple of close scares himself. But one thing's for sure, he is absolutely flying, and he is catching third place Vincent Erbrich, and he will by, I think, let's see here, let me do some math. I think in the next 3 laps, he will be right on the back bumper of that Honda, but it is still a pass that he needs to make. So what do they always say, Ryan? Catching them is one thing, passing quite another.
Yeah, passing someone isn't quite as easy as catching, and Kevin Seclari, he's kind of made it look fairly easy today, but I'm pretty sure that Vincent Erbrich is not really going to want it to stay that way. Meanwhile, Fedi Maximilian, who started last on the grid, finds himself 14th in a bit of a bubble, it seems, at the moment. 6-second gap in front of him, 6-second gap behind him, finding himself all on his own. Davide Chiesa comes out in 12th place after his pit stop, but of course here is the full timetable, so you can see how everyone is doing. Giorgio Simonini leads the way from Nils Najox and Vincent Erbrich. We've already established that well, with Kevin Seclari and Petrochenko rounding out the top 5. Alberto Garcia, Jaroslav Honzik, Fabrizio Cristani, Martinez Amer, and Gregor Schill fill out the top 10. A couple of guys towards the back are a lap or 2 down, I can see. And, well, you are not mistaken when you can see that the timing board cuts off at position 22. We have had 8 retirements so far this race. Some of those: Igor Ogorodnikov, Amir Hosseini, Tobias Befeffa, Alberto Fornaciero, Marcus Lawrence, Tiano Brioni, Francesco Vencato. So some big names, Jesse, you know, not getting to the halfway mark of this race, and it's really, really unfortunate. And a lot of those, it was through no fault of their own.
Yeah, I mean, some big names, but also some big incidences as well. Of course, we saw the Lamborghini have heavy contact, one of the more violent incidents I've ever covered in esports, and that's sort of been the tale of the race for some of these guys, being involved in incidents, sometimes heavy. And you know, it's unfortunate that you don't want to go out like that in a race like this. You know that this is the measuring stick of esports, a lot of these guys, and you always want to measure up to them. And going out with damage, well, it's sort of lame, isn't it? You never want that to happen to you, but it is a reality of motorsports. It doesn't matter if it's real or virtual, it does happen. Even the greats struggle some days. That will be very little consolation to them, though, as they get to miss out on the second half of the race. None of us get to miss out on it, though. We are all going to stay invested and watch this, as I must say, Nils has started to close down that gap on race leader Simonini just a little bit. It's about a 10th in the last lap or so. We'll see if that continues. Seclari continues his pursuit of Erbrich in third place, and Martinez Amir here inside the top 10 in the number 14. And I tell you one other thing, he has just been given a penalty, right?
He has, and the number 14 10-second time penalty for a collision with the 888, and it was in fact a dive bomb as it's been listed here. So Gregor Schilt on the wrong end of another incident, unfortunately, and the Lexus driver not really having too much luck out here today. Meanwhile, you were saying, Jesse, that Nils has started to close the gap a bit. I can tell you why he started to close the gap a bit. He's been lapping in the low 147s, contrary to Giorgio Simonini in the mid 147s. In fact, Nils now with the fastest lap of the race, a 147.1 in race conditions. And, he's just come in for fuel, Jesse, so he's got near 100 litres of fuel on that car, and he's just gone and set a 147.1 out there in that BMW, 147.3 on his previous lap, faster than both of Simonini's previous fastest laps.
Well, he won't care that there's fuel on it. He has a man to beat and a flight to catch, so he is going to have to, and the BMW backwards there, well off the racing line, holding the brakes. He'll spin it around in the grass and get it going the right way. It's the 290. The day has not gone the way of Willich today, but he continues, although now behind the 8-ball even more so, down in 17th place. Kevin Siclari in car cam here. It only means one thing. Producer Mike Jones is trying to show us that this gap is about half a second as he continues this pursuit in front of him. Erbich has to be watching the mirrors now, Ryan. He has to be paying attention that he's got to start driving defensively.
Yeah, Kevin Siclari all over the back of that Honda. You can see on board here the exact kind of thing that Kevin Siclari can see. Of course, our camera situated to the right of the driver. But you still get a great feeling of what it's like to be driving in this car on this circuit. Oh, Kevin Siclari getting a bit too close to the back there. Just a bit too late on the brakes, having to take some avoiding action over the anti-cut curbs. And, if Vincent Ibrich was looking in his mirrors, that would have scared him as well. But fortunately, Kevin Siclari doing the sensible thing and making sure that his car was in the opposite direction to where Vincent Ibrich's car was going, so there was no chance of a collision.
Yeah, Siclari evading more than a car there, evading a surefire penalty and the ruination of his entire race there, taking evasive action. Well done, and that's what you get out of these pro esports level drivers, is that awareness of like, I'm gonna bail. Look, he may have lost a little bit of time, but he knows he's faster than Erbich right now. It doesn't matter. He's gonna catch back up. He didn't ruin his race. He didn't accrue any damage, and he's right back on him. But you know what I think we should do? It'd be really fun. How about we go on board for a lap with this pursuit, Siclari on Erbich. absolutely all over each other is Seclari and Erbich. Erbich going to have to go around the outside here into turn one. And no, excuse me, Seclari have to go around the outside. There's going to be a touch there. Seclari trying to shut the door on Erbich. Can't quite get it done. Pass done. It wasn't the cleanest pass in the world, but it doesn't matter. No damage accrued. A couple of touches, a wiggle, and a nudge. And a new third place driver, Kevin Seclari.
It's not going to stay that way for long, though, because Vincent Erbich is going to try and get back on the outside for the second chicane. Is the Honda going to have the pace to do so? There's contact between the Honda and the Ferrari. Kevin Seclari is not going to slow down, though. He's going to take that position back. And Vincent Erbich, well, he was definitely alongside with the Ferrari. He definitely got in front, but that touch from Kevin Seclari did unstabilize the Honda. And this has allowed Petrochenko to catch right up to these guys. We might have a three-way battle here, but I think there's definitely going to be a steward's inquiry into what happened with that Ferrari. Seclari goes defensive, but is Erbich going to have the inside line? Is he going to be later on the brakes? He'll take more curb. He will take the position back. The Honda goes back into third. And now Petrochenko is on the back of Seclari. He said, well, boys, if you're going to start fighting, I'm going to throw myself into the bag as well.
Petrochenko was a long way back there, but that's exactly what I was talking about earlier in the race, is that if you get to battling with another car, you are going to lose time hand over fist, and that's exactly what's happened here. Seclari and Erbich were very far in front of Petrochenko, but it doesn't matter. And now, all of a sudden, Seclari, who did not win that position ultimately, has now had to go a bit defensive to keep Petrochenko. And look at him move the cover down the inside to keep Petrochenko behind him for fourth. His side is clearly still set on Erbich in front. Erbich goes completely wide, blows through the chicane, gets onto the gas, actually is going to let Seclari by here. I think he straight up let him by here. He's going to try and get in front of Petrochenko. Petrochenko, with the lights blazing, says, no, sir, you missed the chicane. You are going to go behind me. So Erbich, in a term of one corner, has went from third all the way back to fifth, though he doesn't have the position. And Petrochenko goes off in the second chicane. Petrochenko bombs through the chicane, has to give the position back to Erbich. Incredible stuff.
It just doesn't stop here as the light starts to fade. The action continues onwards and onwards. And by the way, whilst all this is happening for third place, don't forget that Nils is still closing down on the likes of Simonini in front. 2.3 seconds the gap now. It was 5.1 seconds after the pit stops. It was even 5.5 seconds before the pit stops. Nils is on a mission at the moment to close down Simonini. And I have to wonder, has that Jag lost all the pace that it had earlier on in the race? It's had a change of tyres. Has it maybe fallen prey to having its tyre pressures incorrect for this second part of the race? Has the BMW got it nailed? But one thing that is definitely nailed on is the fact that Kevin Seclari is ahead of Vincent Erbich. There may be some sort of investigation going on to the incident earlier on. But one thing is for sure is that Erbich is out of the podium positions for now, and he's under pressure from the McLaren behind. Petrochenko is going to have a look on the inside line. I don't think he's going to take a dive into turn one, and he thinks better of it. And he will tuck in behind and see if he can go again at the second chicane.
Well, Petrochenko, the last time he made a dive into the corner on the outside, he missed the corner. So thinking better of it, calmer heads prevail. He must know that he has a shot to pass Erbich. So not the end of the world that he doesn't get it done there. Still in close contact. But meanwhile, Seclari is pulling a gap now in third. He's 19 seconds adrift of Nils in second place. And oh, by the way, Simonini is still hemorrhaging time to Nils, 2 tenths, I should say, in that last sector alone. This BMW for G2 Esports is coming alive here in the final 36 and some half minutes of this race. He can see the man very clearly in front of him, now under 2 seconds. The lights ablaze, like Ryan said. Still 14 degrees as the light is fading. The headlights very much needed here to get around Monza. Now, this race started in the middle of the afternoon. It's going to end in pitch darkness, but The major question awaits: who will be the winner of today's race? Samanini may be hemorrhaging time, but Nils still has to make the pass. And I have a feeling that before long, we're going to see just how wide a Jag is.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see Simonini and Nils go at it on track. And you can see the BMW just getting closer and closer. Meanwhile, there's another BMW making its way up the order, and it's Camera at the moment in the number 62, the other G2 Esports Series BMW in this race. He's found himself on the back of Gregor Schill now, looking to take 10th place from the Lexus, and the 888 of Gregor Schill. He's been in the wars today, but he's going to try his best to recover whatever he can.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the fun of it, isn't it? You get into a race, maybe it doesn't work out the way that you wanted. You're a little bit disappointed, but I find it hard, and Ryan, I'm curious if you're the same way. I find it hard to be truly disappointed as long as I have somebody to race with or against.
I think that is a lot of the attraction, isn't it, of sim racing sometimes for the majority of people, is that position doesn't really matter as long as you enjoy yourself. And you know, a few of these guys have had a bit of a rough race today. They might not be enjoying, you know, how the race has gone, but if you can still find some satisfaction out of a good battle on track, it doesn't feel like 2 hours of your life that you've wasted. And, well, Kemmerer and Gregor Schill, they're going to be going at it now. And, of course, Davide Chiesa is behind as well in the Racing Line Motorsport Ferrari. He wants to get in on this action as well, and he's got every right to do so with the pace that he has in that car. Keep an eye on the gap up top, though. It's 1.4 seconds between the BMW and the Jag. It's getting closer and closer, and it's getting closer between these two as well. The BMW trying to go past the Lexus, but Gregor Schill with a fantastic defense into the second chicane. And Davide Chiesa is just sitting back, watching this all unfold.
Yeah, he's going to have to pick his way through it. That's sort of what Chiesa's done today in this race. He's picked his way through incidences. He's getting incredibly close here. He might actually have a run on Kramer right now. He's going to have to go the long way around the outside. Thinks better of it. Pulls back in line. That BMW pulling down the straightaway really well. He goes to the inside, fakes, goes back in line. No pass being made here. Misses the corner, does Kramer. Can he get anything out of it? I don't think he can. And he will have to fall back in line in Ascari. Actually, yes, no, that is correct. Nothing doing there. All that happened was Kramer lost position, or excuse me, lost time on the driver in front of him, which was Schill. Pachinko here, or Petrochenko, excuse me, he is fighting Airbridge here. And this battle continues. Saklari is gone to the tune of 1.5 seconds in front of this group, but they are still neck and neck, and we'll see if they can get anything sorted out here. And this is the battle that we're all paying attention to. Nils on Simonini now, under 1.7 seconds. It has stabilized a bit, it must be said.
Nils made a mistake on that previous lap. That's where the gap has gone back up. And in fact, it's a 147.6 from Simonini. It's a 147.8 from Nils. He lost 0.6 of a second on that lap due to that mistake. He probably would have been at least another 0.4 quicker on that lap had he not made the mistake. So Nils pushing as hard as he can, and that is so obvious in the lap times he's pumping out. He needs to make sure he doesn't make a mistake like he did before and make sure that he can get the pass done. Meanwhile, down for 10th place, everything has sort of stabilized slightly, but nothing stabilizing in 4th as the McLaren gets ever closer to the back of the NSX. Petrochenko trying to force Vincent Urbich into a mistake. He's seen him do it before when Kevin Saklari was breathing down his neck, and Petrochenko knows that if he keeps on the back of the Honda, it will only be a matter of time.
Yeah, Petrochenko is sitting here going, I saw you make a mistake once. Why won't you do it for me? I thought we were friends, but this battle does continue, and you know, anytime one of them makes a little tiny mistake, the other one makes a mistake, or Urbich is able to defend well. Keep in mind how long it took Saklari to get around Urbich. Urbich actually fought back and got the position back at one point. So This is going to be a good battle between the two of them right down to the end here. They are fairly evenly matched. And here is Fabrizio Cristani, who comes down pit road. Now, that's interesting because he did not need to come back down pit road. And here's Kevin Seclari. Kevin Seclari has absolutely missed the Ascari there. He wasn't even close. He was all the way past the sand trap, Ryan, onto the access road.
I did say Ascari was going to be one of the corners where you saw the most individual mistakes without any support from anyone else. And Kevin Seclari, well, he made a bit of a mistake earlier on in the race, got away with it. He's made another mistake now at Ascari, and he's got away with it again. But look at this. Here comes the Honda. He's lost so much pace because of the mistake. Didn't have the ideal speed coming into the Parabolica, and that's compromised his exit as well. The Honda is going to be on the outside line for the first chicane. Vincent Erbrich will think better of it to try and send one round the outside. He will tuck back in. But Kevin Seclari now has got to refocus, get his mind back in check, and start to throw those laps back down. Meanwhile, Vincent Erbrich and Petrochenko are going to be looking at the Ferrari ahead.
Oh,
thinking,
no!
Okay, he's made a mistake, but camera in the 62.
He just absolutely looped it there. I think he hit the curb exiting Ascari, as we all have done, and it lifted the car up off the ground, sent him into a spin. As far as we saw, didn't hit anything, but that is going to lose him positions. So that's unfortunate that that happened to him, but luckily no damage there. He'll be able to get back into the pursuit and maybe gain some of those positions back. But David Chisley's got to be saying thank you very much. Speaking of thank you very much, Seclari still maintains the third place spots. Erbrich is now really close after the mistake by Seclari, but so is Petrochenko, who is all over the back of Erbrich each time they go into a corner. You can see how much better the McLaren is on his brakes in relation to the Honda. Look at him close up every time and into the center of the corner, but that Honda seems to roll off the corner just a little bit better most of the time. But right here looks like the McLaren was able to pull off of the corner. We're going to see when we get down to turn one. No, it looks like the Honda has the legs.
Well, Vincent Erbrich gets close to the back of Kevin Seclari yet again, but no doing this time round, and the battle for third place is as close as it has been. Meanwhile, out in front, the gap between Simonini and Nils Najoks is 1.3 seconds. 28 minutes of the race remain, and everything starting to come to a conclusion here. But of course, 28 minutes, anything can still happen in that amount of time, Jesse. Everyone else further down the field seems to have a bit more of a, safe gap between each other. A couple of drivers, 1.3, 1.9 second gaps. But this is where the battles are. The battle for the lead of the race, the battle for third place. The top 5 is our focus. And as we come on to another lap, we can see Davide Chiesa actually closing in a bit on, there's a Bentley in front. That's probably Cristani in the way here of a little bit of a battle. So I imagine he's probably going to be moving over fairly soon. Meanwhile, Nils, is he gaining any time on that Jag? Let's see as he crosses the line here. 1.3 seconds. It started to stabilize, Jesse.
Yeah, it sure has. You may recall earlier at the beginning of this race, for the first 40 minutes, it was at 1.3 seconds. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is Groundhog Day. We're right back to it. And I also wonder how much of this audience got that Bill Murray joke. But either way, it is a stabilized gap between the two leaders. It is anything but stable between Seclari, Erbrich, and Petrochenko right now, as somehow Erbrich has found a little extra speed here and has pulled away from Petrochenko a little bit and back onto the back of Seclari. You have to wonder if he's had a little bit of an incident again. Either that, or maybe he's losing the grip in the nighttime hours. Completely dark at this point, only a tiny bit of light in the incredibly cloudy sky. No threat of rain, just complete overcast. Again, the temperature continues to fall, 13°C, both ambient and track, affecting the tires, the cars, and everything here as we plunge into darkness for the final 26 minutes, nearly 8:30 p.m. And the temperatures may be cooling off, but that's the only thing cooling off.
Yep, the drivers are still plenty warm in the car. And of course, we're plenty warm up in the commentary box here as well as the action continues on the circuit. And we'll keep an eye on the gap up at the top with regards to Simonini and Nils as it continues to change or stabilize. And here is the G2 Esports. And actually, that looks a lot closer than it was last time round. It's 1 second. Nils has taken 4/10 out of the Jag on that previous lap. This is the closest the gap has been for a long time, Jesse. Since the first half an hour of the race, we haven't seen the gap this low. And is that BMW starting to come into its own now? Is the Jag starting to struggle with these really low temperatures in the dark? And does that BMW finally have the pace to get onto the back?
Well, early in the race, there were about 9/10 separated, and it settled out to 1.3 seconds. And now down to a second. He will definitely be able to just get a little whiff of the slipstream down the straightaway, which will do nothing but help Nils keep up with that very fast Jag in a straight line. And it couldn't have come at a better time as we are running out of time. I always say that races like this that are endurance races, they're called endurance races, but really they're sprint races disguised as endurance races. Well, right now, there is a 24-minute sprint. 24 minutes for the rest of your life, as they would say. And it is incredible, the recovery from the #1 BMW. They were down and out, 5 seconds adrift after an incident, and they are right back in this thing, though it must be said now he has lost 3/10 on this lap, going over the curbs a little too exuberant. He's got to rein that in, Nils does, if he wants a shot here at the end of this race to win this thing. Seclari has hemorrhaged time to Nils. Also, it's important to mention because it's 21.7 seconds. Ervich is still right on the back of Seclari for third place, and Petrochenko is behind them by less than a second, but incredibly close racing. And here is that battle. This is Ervich and Seclari with Petrochenko in the back. That looks more than second at this point, actually. Pretty sure it will reflect that when they come back through. We'll see if the Honda can do anything down this long front straightaway on the Ferrari. I don't know. He's going to be really close. Does he try to make a move down into turn one? He's going to be forced to go to the outside. Seclari goes defensive down the inside, side by side into one. Looks like it'll all filter out. Is he going to try and get the crossover move? Yes, he is. It is going to be unsuccessful, and he has to fall back in line for the right-hander. But close racing. Look how close they are.
Vincent Abrich going to try again into the second chicane. He has the inside line. This is going to be it. Is this going to be the best opportunity he's had in a long time to get past Kevin Seclari? They'll go side by side through the second chicane. The Honda will get a bit of a better exit. There's a bit of contact between the two of them. Kevin Seclari has the inside line for the first Lesmo. He will keep the position. Now the McLaren of Petrochenko is involved as well, and he's not going to be able to capitalize on that. But Vincent Abrich and Kevin Seclari, so close. Slight bit of tap, didn't slow either of them down. And my word, it's all been kept the same. But here we go. Vincent Abrich is going to be on the inside. He's done this move once before on Kevin Seclari. He's going to force him onto the curbs. He's going to be using the inside. The Ferrari has a better exit.
He's going to spin.
Contact.
Oh my goodness, Kevin Saklari gets spun by Vincent Erbich in Ascari. Close quarters racing, and you had to see that coming. They were just so close for so long and had made so many contacts. You had to assume patience was going to run out. But look at the sportsmanship. Look at the sportsmanship. That's Erbich right there. He does not care that Petrochenko has left them for third place. He wants to race Kevin Saklari. What a classy move.
He slowed down enough for Kevin Saklari to catch up, but I don't think he's going to slow down enough for Kevin Saklari to be in front of him here. The Honda does want that position. Vincent Erbich clearly thinks he deserves the position, even if the contact wasn't really ideal. Ooh, very, very close as well, but Kevin Saklari will get the move done, and he is in front of the BCDC Motorsports Honda, and, well,
he's not yet, though.
Well, he is coming back, actually. Vincent Erbich, he's going to try and retake the position, actually. And we're coming towards the second chicane again. We've seen contact between these two before here. But the Honda will go in front. And he has position now over the Ferrari. But that means Petrochenko finds himself up into third place. And with a 4-second gap as well.
I am out of breath for that, but that battle is still going to continue here. Saklari is actually going to get a run on him here out of the Lesmos here, going down to Ascari. He's going to get close. Look at the touch. Look at the little bit of a touch there saying, hey, mate, I am here. I'm not going anywhere, but the launch of the Honda is going to mean that he's going to be pretty much clear. Saklari forced to let him back in as they go into Ascari, still nose to tail. Now, the leaders of the race, Simonini and Nils, are still about 1.4 seconds the gap, but that gap certainly has stabilized over the past 5 minutes. It's almost like the same problem that plagued the BMW last time is still prevalent. It's like he's running off his tires trying to catch up.
It definitely feels that way at the moment as the gap for the leaders continues to stabilize. Racing incident, by the way, is what was judged by the stewards between the number 12 and the number 7. So no penalties going to be handed out here, but Kevin Saklari doesn't care about penalties right now. He just cares about getting past the Honda, and the straight line speed the Ferrari carried there made it so much easier than it had to be. And Kevin Saklari puts himself back up into 4th place. Will Vincent Erbich stick with him and try and take the place back? He has done so for the last few laps. And I kind of get the feeling that that Honda is going to have a look on the following lap. Not going to have a look into the second chicane. And it's a drive-through penalty for camera in the 62 BMW for track limit abuse. The first drive-through penalty we've seen out here in the race, and it comes in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, I gotta say, I expected, that's typically a thing you see a lot of here at Monza, is track limit penalties because of things exactly like Vincent Erbich did there. But yeah, that is the first one, and it is interesting that it has come so late in the race, but that is a bit of a warning sign to all the other drivers that track limits are still in effect. And it's a warning to us too as well to now expect more of those penalties, because once one person hits that threshold, you can only imagine that there's other drivers that are going to be incredibly close as well. The battle up front, Simonini is out front of Nils. Nils now losing time, lost about 0.4 of a second since the last time that we discussed the lead battle, and is pretty much what we saw at the end of the first stint with Nils. Maybe the tires just not lasting quite as long as the Jag. What a day it would be for Simonini to win this race in a Jag, in a car that doesn't really have a favorable BOP most places, and also kind of isn't the best on its tires, but is getting it done today. David Chiza here trying to make a pass on Schill. Can he do it? He's going to have the inside, not going to have the inside. He's going to get cut off into Ascari. He's going to run wide as Schill. He's going to be side by side. He's going to force him off. Did not see David Chiza there. And Schill's going to run him off the track a little bit. A little bump in the back. That's not Berrier.
That's Cristani. That is Cristani in the Bentley, who's down in 18th place. He's a lap behind these guys.
Oh, look at him go! Oh, no! Big slide, big drive into the corner. And David Chiesa is just going to turn Schill around in Parabolica. That was an accident there. And now Schill is stuck on the inside of Parabolica on a blind turn. That is a scary place to be. He's still going to be sideways as cars filter through. Very scary moment here. Chiesa is waiting, realizing that that was not a fair challenge, but Schill continuing now to struggle, and now here comes Schill back by, and now Chiesa will get going as well, flashing the lights in apology, I would assume, but a dangerous, scary moment for both of those drivers, and it was actually quite humorous that that lap car bumped David up there, and then again just missed the braking point and had to straight line the corner, causing that collision. But seen a lot of classy moves recently with that sort of thing.
Yeah, Gregor Schill's day goes from bad to worse, though. I mean, he was already, he's already had his fair share of people bumping into him, and unfortunately, Davide Chiesa turning him round as well, and seemed like he had a bit of struggle getting that car pointed back in the right direction, maybe just a bit too aggressive on the throttle whilst trying to get it back. Of course, track temperature is fairly cold out here now, 13 degrees, so of course there isn't that much grip. But unfortunate for Gregor Schill, and nice to see from Davide Chiesa, though, to slow down as much as possible to make sure that he didn't take that position. Cristani, by the way, also has received a drive-through penalty, and I get the feeling that that's also going to be for track limits. So, like you said, Jesse, once you've seen one, you start to see more.
Yeah, and that's not where it's going to end either. You're going to continue to see that. And what I'm worried about is seeing some of the drivers inside the top 10, maybe fighting for position, who might get these penalties as well. But you see here, Tatella is closing in on the 222 Ferrari, but even more so, checking in on Nils here. G2 Esports driver and the #1 BMW was within a second earlier. He's now 2.5 out. I think it's safe to say that that challenge has come to an end, just 15 minutes shy of the flag. The tires, we presume, are cooked on that BMW because, again, mirroring exactly what we saw earlier in the race.
So Davide Chiesa will be receiving a drive-through penalty for the collision with Gregor Schill. Did give the position back, of course, but I think it was down to the amount of places that Gregor Schill lost that the stewards have deemed that it's worthy of a drive-through penalty, and especially according to... Oh, actually, no. We're receiving up-to-date information that it's not a drive-through penalty. It will be a 15-second penalty due to the fact that Davide Chiesa did slow down to allow him back past. So, of course, would have been a bit more of a strict penalty had he not, but 15 seconds, and it seems that Davide Chiesa's race hasn't really gone the best, and unfortunately, this incident kind of summing that up. Kevin Seclari, by the way, in 4th place, trying to hunt down the likes of Petrochenko. And you can see Vincent Ebrich in the background having dropped off from Kevin Seclari now. So the top 5 starting to, spread themselves out a bit, but it seems that Simonini in the Jag has finally fended off the likes of Nils Najoks for enough time to wear out the tires on that BMW.
Well, I gotta say, a lot of these guys out here, these aliens, these esports pros, these fast boys, if you will, they have laid it all out on the line for you tonight, and you are seeing exactly what they are made of and why they are pros. And the sort of what I expect out of seeing these guys, I am spoiled. I get to see these guys race every single week, and I get to comment on them. And it's just lovely to see what these top guys are able to do. I mean, that battle between Seclari and Ehrich, I could watch that on repeat. But again, I'm still worried that we are not done with the drive-through penalty awarded by the simulation for course cutting, and you got to be very careful about this, including this group here with Chiza trying to get by Schill, and of course Tatella right behind them. You make a mistake here, you go off. Sim may give you a track limits warning, which you get too many of those. That's how you get that drive through. But Chiza trying to get around him, trying to go around the outside of the second Lesmo. Can't quite do that. He's going to fall into the prey of Tatella here. Tatella's going to have the outside. Can Chiza stay beside him? No, he cannot. He's going to stay to the left. Now he's going to pull back to the right. And now all of a sudden, Tatella's the one that has the chance to take Schill here for 12th place.
Tatella's also had a bit of an up and down race, but he's making the best of it as he can. And Gregor Schill doesn't really look like he's going to be in the look for a top 10 finish unless there is some accident towards the end of the race. But it looks like Davide Chiesa is going to try and take that place back from Tatella. Ooh, off onto the grass. For the Ferrari, that'll slow him down. Well saved as well. Easily lost by doing that. But Davide Chiesa keeps it held. Of course, that 15-second time penalty means that even if he gets in front of these guys, he'll probably end up behind them in the order. But look how slow the Lexus is in a straight line. The Audi gonna try around the outside initially, comes back to the inside. A little bit of a nudge there with the Lexus. Oh, another tap again, a third tap. As Gregor Schill is dispatched and Tatella makes his way up into 12th place. Now here comes Davide Chiesa. He's going to try and get back past Gregor Schill. And is he going to be able to do it? He's going to use the slipstream of the Audi. They're not going to go 3 wide, are they? But the Lexus is going to try and take this place back. He has to cut the course.
Yeah, he's going to have to bail there.
He'll have to leave off.
No, he isn't. He's going to continue on. He feels like he was forced to do that. I don't know how the stewards are going to view that in their mind. But, oh, no, David Chiesa going off there, completely missing the corner. Not entirely sure what happened, but he just missed the first Lesmo there. But the battle still continues for 12th place. Tatella has it. Schill wants it back as they're drag racing up to Ascari. He's going to try and go around the outside of Schill. Can Schill do it? I don't think so. He's going to be covered off by Tatella. Excuse me, Schill has it. Tatella wants it, and he was covered off by Schill is what I meant to say. David Chiesa is now about 2.5, 3 seconds adrift of this group. His day has went from bad to worse in 14th place. Not missing anything up front. Nils is now 3.3 seconds off of Semenini, and Petrochenko is sort of in his own island in 3rd place. Aklari making up time, but I am afraid, Ryan, that he isn't making up time quick enough.
No, probably not, but someone who is making up time quick enough is Tatella on the back of Gregor Schill, and even Cristani in that Bentley, who is a lap down, is still going quick enough, and especially with the slipstream, to stick with these guys, and he's having to try and avoid all of this calamity that's going on right now, but Gregor Schill will not give up the position to Tatella that easily, and here you can see Cristani actually right up the back of the Audi R8 of Tatella. And he is going to back off, doesn't want to try and get involved in all of this battle, but he is sticking with them fairly well, so just goes to show that the Bentley does have pace around here. It's just been a rather unfortunate race for Cristani today, and speaking of unfortunate races, we've had 11 DNFs so far this race, Jesse.
Yeah, it's been an absolute torrid pace. You sort of expect some carnage every time you come to Monza, but this is exceptional and unprecedented in my eyes. You don't really see that many DNFs. A lot of it is due to heavy crashes and damage, so you kind of expect that. Of course, a couple of cars pulled off earlier that they didn't look too damaged, but they just pulled off, and I wonder if perhaps they had some kind of mechanical failure in the sim rig or electronic related, something like that. But either way, we still have 19 cars circulating the track. I think the big portion of these are actually still on the lead lap to show you how close in pace everyone actually is. We're going to sticking with the Tatella Schill battle here as we bring up the live timing and scoring board.
So here is your full timing board then. Giorgio Simonini still leads the way, as you would expect. Nils Najok's in second place, and here we can see Totella going for another move on Gregor Schill. We're not going to get the opportunity to get a break, and there's been an accident down towards the first corner. The Audi and the Lexus come together, and Totella doesn't slow down enough. He just boots it through the first chicane escape road, and that picks him up a drive-through penalty. Slam dunk from the server. You can't do that. Way too fast. And penalised accordingly. Bit of an accident there, though, between himself and Gregor Schill. And I get the feeling that that's going to be investigated by the stewards. Not sure what the verdict on that will be. But both of them have picked up a drive-through penalty. Gregor Schill as well, cutting the course.
You look like the Kool-Aid man, Ryan, going through those styrofoam barricades. Luckily, they were styrofoam, but he just busted through those. The Duke boys are at it again and just kept going. Of course, I said earlier, you got to pay attention because we were going to have more drive-throughs, and it could be problematic for some of these guys in battles, case and point, Schill, but also Totella now has a drive-through penalty. Both of those cars have drive-throughs, so no net gain for either one of those guys because they're going to have to serve that drive-through, and they're still going to be nose to tail, I imagine.
Well, Totella's got 3.8 seconds on Schill, Jesse, so even after they've both served their drive-through penalties, Totella's still going to be in front.
Don't think the stewards are going to allow that to happen.
No, I definitely think there's going to be a significant inquiry into that from the stewards. Meanwhile, Davide Chiesa now sees that Gregor Schill's got a drive-through penalty. Chiesa has a 15-second penalty. It's all war out here in the last 15 minutes here at Monza, and they're going to go side by side apparently into turn one. Davide Chiesa's going to cut the first chicane as well to boot, so Gregor Schill will keep the lead of this battle for now.
Well, here's the thing. Chiesa is trying to do math in his head right now, but wait a minute. If they have a drive-through and I have a 15-second penalty and they don't serve it, which it doesn't look like they are going to serve it, which means they're going to get a time penalty at the end of the race or maybe even a DQ. I'm unsure how that works. Chiesa's trying to figure out, do I race him or do I not race him? Do I race him? Do I not race him? He's trying to figure out what he actually, I think he's just figured it out. Look what he's done there. He's let them go by, and he has dropped to the back, realizing that it doesn't matter. He's going to pick up those spots, and he doesn't want to pick up a DT of his own or get into any more trouble or altercations today. He just straight up let off the gas. He let some of the leaders by too as well, but he also let the man he was racing go, which probably smart, probably what I would have done.
Well, absolute chaos unfolding here towards the end of the race, and I believe that is Petrochenko trying to lap the likes of Schill at the moment. He's just trying to stay out of all of this. He's got a podium for his efforts here today, but he doesn't want to get caught up in all of this that's going on at the moment.
Oh.
The Lexus all over the place, the Ferrari of Davide Chiesa as well, and of course there's the lapped Bentley of Cristani in there to boot. I think Gregor Schill has pulled off to serve that drive-through. Yes, he has. So Coach Dave Academy Lexus, unfortunately, back into the pit lane. And I don't think Davide Chiesa is going to try to unlap himself from the likes of Petrochenko. Has no benefit for doing so, and in fact can't really gain or lose any places at the moment with the cars around him. So he's probably just going to tuck in line to the end of the race. But my word, Jesse, as we're in the last 3 minutes of this incredible 2-hour race, everything starting to get a bit crazy here at the end.
Well, I always heard as a little boy that in motorsport, when they turn out the lights, things get crazy and the intensity gets ratcheted up a couple extra notches. And every single time in ACC that we do this, that tends to be the case. And today was no different. 9:13 in the evening, track continuing to get cooler, 12 degrees C now. And for a lot of these guys, they are limping home. I can tell you one guy that isn't limping home as he gets the 2 to go this time by. It is Simonini here. He has done a magnificent job in an outdated Jaguar. He has driven with all of the heart, composure, and compassion you might expect out of somebody. He's beaten cars that on most tracks would do him in, but he picked the right car. He qualified up front. He's done everything right. He's made no major mistakes today, and he is a lap and a half away from pulling off the near unthinkable. And it's going to be, if he can do it, it'll be a fan favorite win here at Racing Line Motorsport, because you'll remember the day that Simonini won in a Jag in the Alien race.
Definitely an accomplishment that you can, hold your head up high with. It's not really a car that we ever see out here in ACC, and especially less so in esports events. But he's done an incredible job with it, and of course, be looking to take the win here in the Racing Line Motorsport 2 Hours of Monza, brought to you by DAIKO. And we'll be doing a great justice for himself. Let's not forget Nils Najoks, though, 8.3 seconds back. That BMW has fallen well and truly off the pace, but it's still a magnificent effort. Get that car up into second place. It does go well around here, but of course, it does have its fair share of competitors, and a big, congratulations has to be shown out to Petrochenko in a lap's time if he can hold on to that third place. Just needs to keep it on the road, because the McLaren doesn't really get the love it deserves either. And to see that car out on the podium, Jesse, we're going to see 6 different manufacturers in the top 6 at the end of the race. Of course, 3 different manufacturers on the podium. You couldn't really have asked for anything more, could you?
No, I mean, my takeaways are this. The BOP, the custom BOP update that Racing Line is using here absolutely worked. It evened out the field. We spent the majority of this race with the leaders less than 2 seconds, and sometimes less than a second between each other. We saw 3rd, 4th, and 5th locked in an hour battle that were all in different machinery, and you are about to see one of the strangest podiums I have ever seen in sim racing. It's going to be a Jag, a BMW, and a McLaren. I think the last time that happened was in the 90s at some point, but here we are about to see that happen. And well done to anybody who was able to make it to the finish of this race. Attrition was at the highest I've ever seen it. It's been a fantastic race. For some people, they won't forget it. For others, they'll wish they could, but for us, it has been absolutely thrilling. And I cannot think, as Schill is all over the back of Civilati here, flashing the lights, Civilati getting the pass done, Schill not wanting to go into the light there, raging against the dying of the light, but can't get it done. Folks, what can you say about Simonini here today? He has absolutely dominated, leading almost every lap, and he will come across to win the 2 Hours of Monza in a Jaguar.
Simonini, the winner of the Racing Line Motorsport 2 Hours of Monza, brought to you by DAIKO. Nils Najoks in 2nd place, and well, he's quite far back, but Petrochenko comes through Parabolica to round out the podium. Fantastic effort from all of the drivers here today. They've entertained us from start to finish, and I don't think you could have called this race anything subpar from spectacular. Fireworks off here at Monza. Kevin Siclari will come home in 4th place for Racing Line Motorsport in their own home event. Alberto Garcia rounds out the top 5. Vincent Erbrich lost a lot of time in the last stint of the race, comes home in 6th place. Jardier, or Jaroslav Honzik, he's had a fairly quiet race after the start. He comes home in 7th. Martinez Amer, he's on the back straight at the moment, making his way. He will finish 8th. Hartveld 9th. And Valentin Barrier will round out the top 10. And a special mention to Vedi Maximilian, who came from the back of the grid to 11th at the finish line.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible job by him. You start 30th, you finish 11th. Nothing to hang your head at. And of course, David Chisholm will finish 12th. Tatella 13th, Civilati 14th, Schill 15th, Lacio 16th. Romagnolio will finish 17th, Cristani 18th, Spoto in the 19th position. It was a fantastic race here today at Monza in the DAIKO 2 hours. It was thrills, spills, and chills. Excitement all the way down to the checkered flag, sparks, tempers, and everything you could ever ask for. Instant classic today. And it was fantastic sharing the box with you, Ryan Gill. And once again, big thank you to Mike Jones for providing all of the pictures today. And of course, our host, Racing Line Motorsport.
Yeah, and of course, Racing Line Motorsport being able to put on this event, thanks to DAIKO as well, their sponsor. And of course, if you guys, if you're interested in Racing Line Motorsport, you can check out the website and you can register yourself as well to get involved in some of these events in the future. And it's been fantastic to be able to call this event. Of course, Giorgio Simeoni is your race winner. Nils Najoks and Petrochenko rounding out the podium. Jesse, it's been absolutely fantastic to cast this race alongside you. And, well, I think going forward for Racing Line Motorsport events in the future, we're all going to be looking to see the same level of quality from all these esports drivers. But that's going to be it from us for today. We hope you've enjoyed this amazing 2-hour race. Thank you for sticking with us throughout the entire thing, the penalties, the overtakes, the drama, right up until the end. And from myself, Jesse Lee, Mike Jones behind the cameras, and all of Racing Line Motorsport, thank you very much for watching and enjoy the rest of your weekend.